The restaurant napkin tore between Theodore Colton's fingers as he watched another woman's face change. Jessica had been smiling just seconds ago, her perfectly white teeth gleaming under the soft lights of the upscale bistro. Then he'd said the words. "I'm between jobs right now. Actually, I've been unemployed for about 6 months." The smile didn't just fade. It collapsed like a demolished building. Her eyes, which had been bright with interest, went flat and distant. She glanced at her phone, then at the door, then back at him with a look that said she was already composing her exit speech. "Oh." Jessica picked up her purse from the back of her chair. "You know what? I just remembered I have an early meeting tomorrow. I should probably go." Theodore didn't try to stop her. He'd seen this performance 24 times before. He simply nodded, watching as she stood up so quickly her chair scraped against the floor. She was gone before the waiter could bring their appetizers. Sitting alone at the table for two, Theodore stared at the empty chair across from him. The waiter approached cautiously, clearly having witnessed the swift departure. "Will the lady be returning, sir?" "No," Theodore said quietly. "Just the check, please." He paid with cash this time, leaving a generous tip despite ordering nothing. As he walked out into the cool evening air, Theodore pulled out his phone and opened his notes app. Next to Jessica's name he typed, "Failed. Left within 5 minutes of unemployment mention. 25 women. 25 tests. 25 failures." Theodore Colton was worth $3 billion. He'd built his tech company from his garage to a global empire. He could buy anything he wanted, travel anywhere, meet anyone. But he couldn't find one person who would love him for something other than his money. The first few years after his divorce, he'd been honest about his wealth. Women flocked to him. They laughed at jokes that weren't funny. They agreed with opinions they clearly didn't share. They touched his arm and batted their eyelashes and talked about how money didn't matter to them, even as their eyes calculated his net worth. One woman had actually Googled him during their date, her face lighting up when she found his Forbes profile. Another had proposed marriage on the second date, already planning which charities they'd donate to as a couple. A third had brought her mother to meet him after one dinner. So 2 years ago, Theodore had started the test. He created a fake identity. Theodore Collins, freelance web designer, struggling to make ends meet. He dressed down. He drove a borrowed Honda. He split checks and sometimes let his card get declined on purpose. He wanted to see who would stay when the money was gone. The answer apparently was no one. Theodore walked the 12 blocks to where he'd parked his assistant's car. His real car, a custom Tesla, sat in his private garage. Tonight he'd driven a 7-year-old Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door. His phone buzzed. A text from Richard, his assistant and closest friend. "How'd it go?" Theodore typed back, "Number 25. Same result." 3 dots appeared, then, "Maybe it's time to stop, Theo. This is eating you alive." Theodore didn't respond. He drove across town, away from the expensive restaurants and trendy bars where his dates usually ended. He found himself in the Riverside district, a working-class neighborhood where people clocked in and out and worried about making rent. A diner glowed on the corner. Riverside Diner, the neon sign read, with half the letters flickering. Theodore parked and went inside, suddenly wanting coffee and a place to think that wasn't his empty penthouse. The diner was nearly empty. An older couple sat in one booth, and a trucker hunched over pie at the counter. Behind the register, a young woman was refilling napkin dispensers, her movements mechanical with exhaustion. Theodore slid into a booth by the window and picked up the plastic menu, not really reading it. "I'll be right with you," the woman called out. Her voice was warm despite the tiredness in it. Theodore glanced up and for the first time that night, really saw another human being. She was beautiful in a natural way that had nothing to do with expensive makeup or designer clothes. Her dark skin glowed even under the harsh diner lights. Natural curls were pulled back into a practical ponytail, with a few pieces escaping to frame her face. She wore a simple red uniform dress with a white apron, and comfortable shoes that had clearly walked thousands of miles. But it was her eyes that caught him. When she approached his table with a pot of coffee, those eyes held kindness. Real kindness, the kind that couldn't be faked. "Coffee?" she asked, already turning over his cup. "Please." She poured, and he noticed her name tag, Hazel. "Long night?" Hazel asked, setting down a small container of creamer. Theodore looked up, surprised by the question. "Is it that obvious?" She smiled, and it transformed her tired face into something radiant. "I've worked here 4 years. I can spot someone who needs coffee and quiet from a mile away. Take your time with the menu. No rush." She moved to check on the older couple, and Theodore found himself watching her. She knew their order without asking, laughed at something the old man said, touched the woman's shoulder gently when she coughed. These weren't the practiced gestures of someone working for tips. This was genuine care. When Hazel returned to his table, Theodore ordered eggs and toast, though he wasn't hungry. "Coming right up," Hazel said, writing it down. "You want those eggs scrambled?" "However's easiest." She paused, pen hovering over her order pad. "I asked how you want them, not what's easiest for me." Theodore blinked. "Scrambled then." "Thank you." Another smile, smaller this time but somehow more personal. "Good choice." While she put his order in, Theodore noticed her glancing at the clock. It was nearly midnight. How long had she been working? He watched as she moved between tables, refilling coffee for the trucker without being asked, boxing up leftovers for the older couple with extra care. When his food came, it was hot and better than he expected. Hazel set down the plate with a weariness that spoke of hours on her feet. "Can I get you anything else?" "How long have you been working today?" The question came out before Theodore could stop it. Hazel glanced at the clock again. "Since 6 this morning. Double shift. Jenny called in sick so I covered. That's 18 hours. 17 and a half, but who's counting?" She tried to make it sound light, but Theodore heard the exhaustion underneath. "The tips are good on double shifts though." She walked away before he could respond, heading to the kitchen to check on another order. Theodore ate slowly, thinking about Jessica walking out of the restaurant because he'd mentioned being unemployed. He thought about all the women who'd left when they realized he wasn't going to buy them expensive gifts or take them on luxury vacations. And he thought about Hazel, who'd been on her feet for 17 and a half hours and still took the time to ask if he was okay. When Theodore asked for the check, Hazel brought it over with a small wrapped peppermint on top. "On the house," she said, gesturing to the candy. "You look like you needed something sweet tonight." Theodore pulled out his wallet and reached for his credit card. Then he stopped. The test. The stupid, endless test that had consumed 2 years of his life. Before he could reconsider, he handed over the card. Hazel took it to the register. Theodore watched her swipe it once, then twice. She frowned and tried a third time. Then she looked over at him, and in her eyes he saw not judgment, but concern. She walked back to his table and leaned down slightly, keeping her voice low. "Hey, the card's not going through. It happens sometimes with these old machines. Do you have another one, or maybe cash?" Theodore made a show of checking his wallet, knowing it was empty except for the declined card. "I thought I had cash, but I must have spent it earlier. That's my only card." Here it comes, he thought. Here's where she gets uncomfortable and calls the manager. But Hazel didn't do that. Instead, she straightened up and smiled. "Don't worry about it. I've got it covered." "What?" "The meal's on me tonight." She was already walking back to the register. Theodore stood up quickly. "No, wait. I can't let you do that." Hazel was pulling bills from her apron pocket, her own tip money. She counted out enough to cover his meal plus tax and put it in the register, punching in her employee code. "It's done," she said simply. "Everyone has rough days. Pay it forward when you can." Theodore stared at her. This woman who'd been working for 17 and a half hours, who was clearly exhausted and probably needed every dollar she made, had just paid for his meal without hesitation. Without making him feel small. Without even really making a big deal about it. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Hazel replied. She handed him the wrapped peppermint. "But take the candy. It's the good kind." Theodore's throat felt tight. "Thank you. Really. I'll pay you back." "If you want to pay me back, get some sleep. You look like you need it as much as I do." She was already moving toward the kitchen, calling back, "Have a good night." Theodore walked out of Riverside Diner in a daze. He sat in the borrowed Honda for a full 5 minutes, staring at the peppermint in his hand. 25 women had failed his test by rejecting him when they thought he had no money. But Hazel hadn't known there was a test. She'd simply seen another human being who needed help, and she'd helped him. Theodore drove home to his penthouse, but for the first time in months he wasn't thinking about his failed dates or his ex-wife or his loneliness. He was thinking about kind eyes in a tired face, and a woman who'd given away her tips to help a stranger. He unwrapped the peppermint and put it in his mouth. Hazel was right. It was the good kind. Could you walk away from someone who showed you kindness when you had nothing to offer in return? Would you recognize real love if it wore a simple red uniform and served you coffee at midnight? If this story is touching your heart, subscribe to see what happens when Theodore returns to that diner. Comment below. Should he tell Hazel the truth right away, or does he need to be sure she's different first? Across town, Hazel Brooks locked the diner door behind the last customer and began the closing routine. Her feet throbbed. Her back ached. She'd been awake for 20 hours and she still had to walk 3 blocks to the bus stop, ride for 30 minutes and walk another 2 blocks home. But as she wiped down tables and counted the register, Hazel felt a small warmth in her chest. She thought about the sad man in the booth by the window, the one whose credit card didn't work. She'd seen the shame in his eyes when he realized he couldn't pay, the same shame she'd seen in the mirror plenty of times when her own money ran short. The $10 she'd paid for his meal had been part of her tips. It meant she'd have $10 less for this week's groceries. But Hazel had learned from her mother that kindness wasn't about what you could afford to give. It was about what you couldn't afford not to give. Her phone buzzed. A text from her younger brother Terrence. "You coming home soon? I made mac and cheese." Hazel smiled and typed back, "On my way. Save me some." She finished closing, said goodnight to Frank the cook and stepped out into the cool night. The streets were quiet. A few cars passed. Somewhere a dog barked. Hazel pulled her jacket tighter and started walking toward the bus stop. As she walked, she didn't notice the Honda Civic parked across the street, or the man sitting inside it, watching to make sure she got to the bus safely. She didn't know that Theodore Colton had circled back, unable to shake the feeling that he needed to make sure she was okay. She didn't know that her simple act of kindness had just changed both of their lives forever. Hazel boarded the bus when it arrived, found a seat near the back and closed her eyes. In 17 hours she'd be back at the diner for another shift. But right now, all she wanted was to eat her brother's mac and cheese and sleep. She didn't dream of handsome strangers or romantic gestures. Hazel Brooks had learned not to dream beyond her means. She dreamed, instead of saving enough money to fix the leak in their apartment ceiling, of Terrence's college applications, of someday having enough left over to remember what it felt like not to worry. Small dreams. Reasonable dreams. The kind of dreams that people with 18-hour shifts and tired feet were allowed to have. But sometimes the universe has different plans. Sometimes, a declined credit card and a $10 kindness can set in motion a series of events that no one could have predicted. Sometimes the smallest gesture creates the biggest change. Theodore drove home slowly, the taste of peppermint still in his mouth. He thought about tests and truth and what it meant to really know someone. He thought about 25 failures and 1 unexpected success, though Hazel didn't know she'd succeeded at anything. Most of all, he thought about going back. Because for the first time in 2 years, Theodore Colton had found someone worth being honest with. He just had to figure out how. The night settled over the city, over the empty diner and the moving bus and the luxury penthouse where a billionaire couldn't sleep. Somewhere in that night, 2 paths that should never have crossed were beginning to intertwine. And neither Theodore nor Hazel had any idea what was coming next. Theodore stood outside Riverside Diner for the 3rd time in 4 days, trying to convince himself this was a terrible idea. It was Thursday afternoon, and the lunch rush had just ended. Through the large windows, he could see Hazel moving between tables, that same efficient grace he'd noticed the first night. She was wearing the red uniform again, her hair pulled back, moving with purpose despite the obvious exhaustion in her shoulders. "This is stupid," Theodore muttered to himself. "She paid for your meal. You pay her back. That's all this is." But he knew it was more than that. He'd thought about her every day since Monday night. The way she'd handled his embarrassment with such dignity. The way she'd given her own money without hesitation. The way she'd looked at him like he was a person, not a transaction. Theodore pushed open the door. A bell chimed above his head. Hazel looked up from wiping down a booth and her face registered surprise, then something that looked like pleasure. "Hey," she said, straightening up. "Coffee and eggs guy. I didn't think I'd see you again. I came to pay you back." Theodore pulled out a $20 bill. "For the meal. And I wanted to apologize for putting you in that position." Hazel walked over, but she didn't reach for the money. "You don't need to apologize. And you really don't need to pay me back." "Yes, I do. Please." Theodore held out the 20. For a moment Hazel just looked at him. Then she took the bill with a small nod. "Okay. Thank you. That's kind of you. It's the least I can do." Theodore shifted on his feet, suddenly unsure what to do next. He should leave. The debt was paid. But his feet didn't move toward the door. "You want to sit down?" Hazel asked, seeming to sense his hesitation. "I'm about to take my break. I could use the company. I don't want to intrude." "You're not intruding. I'm offering." She gestured to the booth by the window, the same one he'd sat in Monday night. "I'll grab us some coffee." Before Theodore could argue, she was heading to the counter. He slid into the booth, his heart beating faster than it should for such a simple interaction. Hazel returned with 2 cups of coffee and a plate of fries. Frank made too many. Help me eat them before I consume the entire plate myself. She sat down across from him, and Theodore got his first real look at her in daylight. The fluorescent lights at night hadn't done her justice. In the afternoon sun streaming through the window, her skin seemed to glow. Her eyes were a deep brown that held warmth and intelligence in equal measure. When she smiled, a small dimple appeared in her left cheek. "So," Hazel said, popping a fry into her mouth. "Bad week." "Why do you say that?" "Most people don't have their card declined and then show up 3 days later with exact change plus tip. Usually means the week turned around." She sipped her coffee. "Did it? Turn around?" Theodore found himself smiling. "It's getting better." "Good. I'm glad." Hazel seemed to mean it. "What do you do?" "For work, I mean. When you're not between jobs." Here was the moment. The test. Theodore had planned this part carefully. "I'm a web designer. Freelance. It's pretty inconsistent, which is why money gets tight sometimes." It wasn't completely a lie. Theodore had started his career building websites before moving into software development. He still knew how to code, how to design, how to create digital experiences. He just didn't need to do it for money anymore. "That sounds interesting," Hazel said. "Do you enjoy it?" "I do. There's something satisfying about taking someone's vision and making it real, you know? Turning ideas into something people can actually use." Hazel nodded. "I get that. I feel the same way about baking." "You bake?" "When I have time, which isn't often." Hazel's face lit up in a way Theodore hadn't seen before. "My mom taught me. She used to make these amazing cakes for every birthday, every holiday. People would ask her to bake for their events, but she always said it was just for family. After she passed, I kept all her recipes." "I'm sorry," Theodore said quietly. "About your mom." "Thank you. It's been 3 years." Hazel looked down at her coffee cup. "My dad passed 2 years ago. Heart attack. So now it's just me and my brother." Theodore felt a pang of guilt for prying into her obvious pain, but Hazel looked back up with a small smile. "But we're managing. Terrence is 16, smart as anything. He wants to go to college, study engineering. I'm going to make sure he gets there." "That's a lot of pressure on you." Hazel shrugged. "Family takes care of family. That's what my parents taught me. You do what needs to be done." They talked for another 20 minutes, the conversation flowing easily. Hazel told him about the diner's regular customers, the old couple who'd been coming every Wednesday for 30 years, the trucker who was driving cross-country to surprise his daughter. Theodore told her about a fictional website project for a small business, making up details that sounded plausible. He hated lying to her. Every word felt wrong in his mouth. But he was already in too deep, and he needed to know if what he felt was real, if her kindness was real. "I should get back to work," Hazel said finally, glancing at the clock. "But this was nice. Thanks for the company." "Thank you for the fries." Theodore stood up. "And for the conversation." "Anytime." Hazel gathered the cups and the empty plate. "You know where to find me. I'm here most days." Theodore left the diner feeling lighter than he had in months. As he walked to his car, his phone buzzed. "Richard. Where are you?" "We have the board meeting in an hour." Theodore checked his watch and cursed. He'd completely lost track of time. "I'm on my way." 20 minutes. He drove to his office building downtown, parked in his reserved spot in the underground garage, and took the private elevator to the top floor. His assistant met him at the door with a tablet full of briefings. "You have messages from the development team, the quarterly reports are ready for review, and Senator Morrison called about the education initiative," Richard rattled off. "Also, you look happy." "What happened?" "Nothing happened. Theo, I've worked for you for 6 years. I know your faces. That's your happy face. Did you meet someone?" Theodore adjusted his tie. "Maybe. It's complicated." "Is this about the diner waitress? The one who paid for your meal?" "How did you?" "I track your credit cards, remember? Including the dummy account. I saw the transaction from her employee number." Richard crossed his arms. "Please tell me you're not still doing the test thing." "I'm being careful." "You're being paranoid." Richard followed Theodore into his office. "This woman showed you genuine kindness. Maybe just be honest with her?" "I will be. Eventually. I just need to be sure." "Sure of what? That she's not after your money?" "She doesn't even know you have money." Theodore sat down behind his massive desk, looking out at the city skyline. From here he could see the Riverside district in the distance, though the diner was too small to pick out specifically. I need to know that what I'm feeling is real, Theodore said quietly. That it's not just loneliness or desperation or me projecting what I want onto someone kind. Richard sighed. Just don't wait too long. Honesty matters. The longer you wait, the harder the truth becomes. The board meeting went well. Theodore presented the quarterly numbers, discussed expansion plans, and fielded questions about the company's direction. He was good at this part, the strategy and vision. Building something from nothing was in his blood. But even as he talked about market shares and product development, part of his mind was back in that diner booth, watching Hazel's dimple appear when she smiled. Over the next 2 weeks, Theodore became a regular at Riverside Diner. He came for lunch when he could, dinner when he couldn't. He always sat in the same booth, and Hazel always made time to talk with him, even if just for a few minutes. He learned that she took online classes at night, working toward a business degree. That her favorite color was yellow because it reminded her of her mother's kitchen. That she sang to herself when she thought no one was listening, old soul songs that her father had loved. In return, Theodore shared carefully edited versions of his own life. He talked about growing up in foster care, which was true. About working his way through college, which was true. About building something from nothing, which was also true, though he left out the part where that something was now worth billions. You're different from most people I meet, Hazel said one evening. They were sitting in the booth after her shift ended, splitting a piece of apple pie. Different how? You listen. Really listen. Most people are just waiting for their turn to talk. Hazel took a bite of pie. And you ask real questions. Not the surface stuff. Theodore felt the guilt twist in his stomach again. He was listening, but he was also hiding. You make it easy to listen. That's a nice thing to say. Hazel smiled at him, and Theodore felt his heart skip. He was falling for her. Despite his best efforts to keep his distance, despite the lies, despite everything, he was falling hard and fast for this woman who worked double shifts and paid for strangers' meals and dreamed of opening a bakery someday. On Friday of the second week, Theodore's card was declined again. Genuinely this time because he'd forgotten to transfer money into the dummy account. Hazel just laughed. Not again, she said, shaking her head. You've got to get a better bank. I know. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just let me cover it and you can buy me coffee next time. She paused. There will be a next time, right? Theodore looked into her hopeful eyes and knew he was in trouble. Definitely. Tomorrow? Tomorrow's Saturday. I work the morning shift. Come by around 2. It's a date. The words were out before Theodore could stop them. They both froze. Hazel's eyes widened slightly. I mean not a date, Theodore backtracked. Just, meeting up. For coffee. As friends. Right. Friends. Hazel's voice was carefully neutral, but Theodore thought he saw disappointment flicker across her face. Saturday at 2. I'll be here. Theodore left the diner kicking himself. Why had he said that? And why had he immediately taken it back? He wanted it to be a date. He wanted to take her somewhere nice, somewhere that wasn't this diner where she worked. He wanted to be honest about who he was and what he felt. But the test. The endless, stupid test. His phone rang. Richard. I need to know if you're free next Friday, his assistant said. The Children's Hospital Foundation Gala. They're expecting you. Theodore had completely forgotten. He was one of the primary donors and was supposed to give a speech. I'll be there. Good. Also, I'm sending over the background check you requested. Theodore stopped walking. What background check? On Hazel Brooks. You asked me to run one 2 weeks ago. He had asked, hadn't he? Right after that first lunch. He'd wanted to know if she was in debt, if she had connections to any of the women who'd tried to trap him before, if there was anything that would indicate she might have ulterior motives. Delete it, Theodore said. I don't want to see it. What? Theo, you never request a background check and then don't want to see it. Delete it, Richard. I mean it. I don't want to know. There was a pause. You really like her. Just delete it. Okay. Consider it done. Richard's voice softened. For what it's worth, I think this might be good for you. Just maybe tell her the truth sooner rather than later? Theodore ended the call and looked back at the diner. Through the window, he could see Hazel wiping down tables, preparing for the night shift despite having already worked since morning. He pulled out his phone and opened a new text to Richard. How much does her brother's college tuition cost? And don't ask questions. Just find out and set up a scholarship in someone else's name. 3 dots appeared. On it. Theodore drove home feeling like he was standing at the edge of a cliff. He could feel himself tipping forward, falling, but he couldn't stop it. Didn't want to stop it. Tomorrow at 2 he'd see Hazel again. And maybe, just maybe, he'd find the courage to start telling her the truth. Or at least stop lying quite so much. In her small apartment across town, Hazel was helping Terrence with his calculus homework. Or trying to. Her mind kept drifting to Theodore, to the way he'd said, "It's a date," and then immediately backtracked. Did he like her? Did she want him to like her? He was unemployed, struggling, completely wrong for her practical nature that said she needed someone stable, someone who could help with bills and Terrence's future. But he made her laugh. He listened to her dreams about the bakery without telling her they were unrealistic. He looked at her like she mattered, like she was more than just a waitress serving him coffee. "You're smiling at my math homework," Terrence said. "That's weird even for you." "Sorry? What were you saying about derivatives?" Terrence studied her face. "You met someone." "I did not." "You totally did. You have that look Mom used to get when she talked about Dad." Hazel felt her chest tighten at the mention of their mother. "I don't have any look. And even if I did meet someone, which I didn't, it wouldn't matter. I don't have time for dating. Everyone has time for being happy, Hazel. That's what Dad always said. Dad also said bills don't pay themselves and college isn't free. Focus on your homework." But as Terrence bent back over his calculus, Hazel let herself think about tomorrow at 2. About coffee with Theodore, which maybe wasn't a date but also maybe could become something more. She was being ridiculous. She knew that. But for the first time in 3 years since her mother had died and her whole world had narrowed down to work and survival, Hazel Brooks let herself feel a flutter of possibility. And across the city, in his penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows and custom furniture, Theodore Colton felt the exact same flutter. Neither of them slept much that night. Both of them counted the hours until 2 o'clock. And both of them had no idea that tomorrow would change everything in ways they couldn't begin to imagine. Saturday at 2 o'clock, Theodore walked into Riverside Diner carrying 2 cups of expensive coffee from a shop 3 blocks away. Hazel was just finishing her shift, counting tips at the counter. When she saw him, her face broke into a genuine smile that made his heart race. "You brought coffee to a diner?" she said, laughing. "That's bold. I promised I'd buy you coffee. I didn't promise it would be from here." Theodore set 1 cup in front of her. "Vanilla latte. I hope that's okay." "I took a guess." Hazel picked up the cup and took a sip, her eyes closing briefly in appreciation. "Okay, that's really good. Way better than the stuff we serve here. Don't let Frank hear you say that. Frank knows. He drinks his coffee black for a reason." Hazel grabbed her jacket from behind the counter. "You ready? I know a place we can actually sit outside. It's a nice day." They walked to a small park 2 blocks from the diner. The afternoon sun was warm, and families were out with children, throwing frisbees and having picnics. Hazel led them to a bench under a large oak tree, settling down with a contented sigh. "I don't get to do this enough," she said. "Just sit. No tables to wait on, no orders to take. Just sit and watch the world happen." Theodore sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "How long have you been at the diner?" "For years. Since right after my dad died. I needed something flexible that paid cash tips and Linda, the owner, took a chance on me." Hazel sipped her latte. "She's been good to me. Lets me switch shifts when Terrence has school stuff. Doesn't mind when I take online classes during slow periods." "You're working toward a business degree?" "Hospitality management, specifically. I figure if I'm going to open a bakery someday, I should know how to actually run a business." Hazel glanced at him. "It's a long shot, I know. Takes money to start a business, and I'm barely keeping up with rent and Terrence's expenses. But my mom always said dreams are free, so I might as well have good ones." Theodore wanted to tell her that her dreams weren't long shots at all. That he could write her a check right now that would cover everything she needed. Instead he said, "What would you call it?" "The bakery." Hazel's eyes lit up. "Brooks and Butter. My mom's name was Beverly Brooks, and she used to say butter makes everything better. It's silly but it's perfect." Theodore meant it. "What would you specialize in?" And just like that, Hazel was off, describing her vision with an enthusiasm that was contagious. She talked about custom cakes for special occasions, fresh bread every morning, cookies that reminded people of childhood. She talked about hiring local kids who needed after-school jobs, about creating a community space where people felt welcome. Theodore listened, genuinely captivated. This wasn't some vague dream. Hazel had thought through every detail, from the menu to the business model. She was smart and practical and passionate all at once. "Sorry," Hazel said finally, laughing at herself. "I get carried away. You probably didn't sign up for a business presentation. I liked it. You should keep talking. Your turn. What's your dream? If money wasn't an issue, what would you do? The question caught Theodore off guard. What would he do if money wasn't an issue? Money hadn't been an issue for years, and mostly he just worked more, made more, acquired more. He'd forgotten what it felt like to want something just because it made him happy. I think I'd like to build something that actually helps people, Theodore said slowly. Not just makes money but makes a difference. Maybe something with education or helping kids who come from difficult situations. It was true. The most satisfying thing about his wealth wasn't the luxury, it was the foundation he'd started last year that provided coding classes and computers to underprivileged schools. He just didn't usually talk about it. That's a good dream, Hazel said softly. The world needs more people who think like that. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching a group of kids play soccer nearby. Theodore became aware of how close Hazel was sitting, how easy it would be to reach over and take her hand. But he didn't. Not yet. Can I ask you something personal? Hazel said. Sure. What happened? With your job, I mean. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but sometimes it helps to talk about it. Theodore had prepared for this question, but sitting here next to Hazel, the rehearsed answer felt hollow. The company I worked for downsized. Last hired, first fired. It's been tough finding something new in my field. Most places want someone younger or someone with more corporate experience. Another lie. More weight on his conscience. That's not fair, Hazel said. From what you've told me about your work, you're talented. They're missing out. Thanks. That means a lot. Have you thought about starting your own business? I mean, if you're good at web design, you could do freelance full-time. Build up a client base. Maybe. The startup costs are tough though. Theodore was digging himself deeper and deeper. Hazel nodded sympathetically. I get that. Everything costs money, and when you don't have it, the gap just keeps getting wider. She finished her latte and stood up. Come on. I want to show you something. They walked several blocks into a neighborhood that was clearly struggling. Boarded-up storefronts lined the street, interspersed with check-cashing places and discount stores. Hazel stopped in front of an empty corner building with large windows. This place has been vacant for 2 years, she said, looking up at it. It used to be a bakery, actually. The owner retired and no one took it over. I walk past it sometimes and imagine what it could be. Theodore studied the building. It had good bones. The space was larger than it looked from outside, and the location, while currently depressed, was in an area that showed signs of revitalization. With the right investment, this could work. You've really thought about this, he said. Too much, probably. Terrence says I should focus on reality instead of daydreams. Hazel's voice held a note of sadness. He's probably right. I should just be grateful I have steady work and we have a roof over our heads. Dreams aren't stupid, Theodore said firmly. And having them doesn't mean you're not grateful. It means you're hopeful. That's different. Hazel looked at him and something passed between them. Understanding, a connection that went beyond words. Then she smiled. You're pretty wise for an unemployed web designer. I have my moments. They walked back toward the diner slowly, neither one eager to end the afternoon. When they reached Hazel's bus stop, she turned to face him. This was really nice. Thank you for the fancy coffee and the company. Thank you for showing me your dream building. And for letting me listen to your plans. Hazel hesitated, then said, Would you want to have dinner sometime? Like a real dinner, not just coffee and fries at the diner? Theodore's heart leaped. Are you asking me on a date? I am. And before you panic and take it back like last time, just think about it, okay? No pressure. But I like spending time with you, and I think you like spending time with me, and maybe we could do that more officially. She was nervous. Theodore could see it in the way she was fidgeting with her jacket zipper, in the hopeful uncertainty in her eyes. This strong, capable woman who worked 18-hour shifts and supported her teenage brother was nervous about asking him out. Yes, Theodore said. I would really like that. Hazel's smile was worth every lie he'd told to get here. Yeah. When? I'm off next Thursday evening. There's this Italian place near the diner that's not too expensive. We could. Let me take you somewhere nice, Theodore interrupted, then immediately regretted it. He was supposed to be struggling financially. I mean, somewhere a little nicer than my budget usually allows. I've been saving up for something special. Hazel looked like she wanted to argue, but instead she nodded. Okay. Thursday at 7? It's a date. A real date this time. The bus arrived and Hazel climbed on. Through the window she waved at him and Theodore waved back, feeling like a teenager instead of a 36-year-old billionaire. He pulled out his phone as the bus pulled away. "Richard, I need a reservation for 2 on Thursday at Rossini's. The Italian place downtown?" "Theo, that's the most expensive restaurant in the city. If you're trying to pretend you're broke, I'll figure it out. Just get me the reservation. And make sure it's somewhere private." Theodore spent the rest of the weekend in a state of distraction. He went to the office on Sunday to catch up on work he'd been neglecting, but he couldn't focus. He kept thinking about Hazel's smile, the way her whole face changed when she talked about her dreams, the courage it took for her to ask him out. Monday morning, Richard appeared in his office doorway looking concerned. "We need to talk about the Hazel situation." Theodore looked up from his computer. "What about it? You're taking her to Rossini's? That's a $500 a plate restaurant. How are you going to explain being able to afford that when you supposedly can't pay for eggs at a diner?" "I told her I'd been saving up. For a date at one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city? Theo, she's not stupid. She's going to have questions." Theodore ran his hands through his hair. I know it's getting complicated. It's past complicated. It's approaching disaster." Richard sat down across from him. "I like that she makes you happy. I really do. But this has to end. You need to tell her the truth." "I will. After the date. After I know for sure that this is real." "It is real. You're the one making it fake with all the lies." Theodore knew Richard was right, but he couldn't seem to stop himself. Every time he thought about coming clean, he remembered his ex-wife, the woman who'd married him for his money and left when she found someone richer. He remembered the 25 women who'd walked away when they thought he had nothing. "1 more week," Theodore said. "After the date I'll tell her. I promise." Richard didn't look convinced, but he nodded. "Your reservation is confirmed for Thursday at 7. And Theo? Wear something that actually looks like you could afford to be there. If you show up in those old jeans, the staff will call security." The week crawled by. Theodore threw himself into work, but even his board members noticed his distraction. On Wednesday he had lunch with 3 investors who wanted to discuss expanding into Asian markets, and he had to ask them to repeat themselves twice because his mind was on tomorrow night. Hazel texted him Wednesday evening, "Still on for tomorrow?" Theodore responded immediately, "Absolutely. I'll pick you up at your place at 6:45. I'll text you the address." "I'm excited." "Me too." 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before Hazel's next message came through. "Is this weird? That I'm excited? We barely know each other." Theodore smiled at his phone. "Not weird. I'm excited too. And I think we know each other better than you think. The important things anyway." "The important things. I like that. See you tomorrow." Theodore set his phone down and leaned back in his chair. He was sitting in his home office, surrounded by awards and accolades, certificates of achievement and photos with celebrities and politicians. All the trappings of success that were supposed to make him happy. But nothing in this room made him feel the way Hazel's simple text message did. Nothing came close to the anticipation of tomorrow night, of seeing her smile, of having a real, official date with the woman who'd shown him more genuine kindness in one night than most people had in years. He just had to get through the date without revealing too much, without letting slip the truth about who he really was. 1 more week, he told himself. 1 more week and then he'd come clean. Once he was absolutely sure that what he felt was mutual, that Hazel felt the same way about Theodore Collins, the struggling web designer, as she might about Theodore Colton, the billionaire CEO. The guilt gnawed at him, but Theodore pushed it aside. He'd come too far to turn back now. And besides, wasn't testing someone's character before revealing your wealth the smart thing to do? Wasn't he just protecting himself from getting hurt again? These were the questions Theodore asked himself as he prepared for Thursday. Questions he didn't have good answers for. Questions that maybe didn't have good answers at all. But tomorrow none of that would matter. Tomorrow he'd take Hazel somewhere beautiful and show her a perfect evening. Tomorrow he'd let himself forget about tests and lies and just be with her. Tomorrow everything would be perfect. Or at least that's what Theodore hoped. Because the truth was waiting in the wings, patient and inevitable, ready to make its entrance when the time was right. And when it did, nothing would ever be the same again. Thursday evening, Theodore stood in front of his closet trying to decide what to wear. Everything was either too expensive or too obviously designer. He finally settled on dark jeans and a button-down shirt that looked nice but not extravagant, paired with a jacket he'd bought years ago before his company took off. Richard had arranged for a car service, but Theodore had instructed the driver to pick him up 2 blocks from Hazel's apartment building in an older model sedan. He wasn't ready for her to see him being dropped off by a private driver. At 6:45 exactly, Theodore knocked on apartment 3B in a modest building in the Riverside district. He heard footsteps, then the door opened and his breath caught. Hazel wore a simple blue dress that brought out the warmth in her skin tone. Her hair was down for the first time since he'd met her, natural curls framing her face. She'd put on makeup, not much, just enough to highlight her beautiful features. "Wow," Theodore said. "You look stunning." Hazel smiled, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. "You clean up pretty well yourself. Come in for a second. I just need to grab my purse." Theodore stepped inside the small apartment. It was neat but worn, the furniture clearly second-hand but well-maintained. Photos covered one wall, family pictures showing a younger Hazel with her parents and Terrence at various ages. A desk in the corner was piled with textbooks and a laptop that had seen better days. "Hazel, who's here?" A teenage voice called from another room. A tall, lanky kid appeared in the doorway. He had the same warm eyes as his sister, and he was studying Theodore with open curiosity. "Terrence, this is Theodore." "Theodore, my brother Terrence." "Nice to meet you," Theodore said, extending his hand. Terrence shook it, his grip firm. "You're the web designer?" Terrence said. "Hazel talks about you." "Does she?" Theodore glanced at Hazel, who was now definitely blushing. "Terrence," Hazel warned. "What? You do. Last night you spent 20 minutes trying to pick out a dress and you kept saying, 'Would Theodore like this one?'" "I'm going to kill you," Hazel said, but she was smiling. "Ignore my brother. He thinks he's funny." "I am funny," Terrence protested. He looked at Theodore. "You're taking her somewhere nice, right? She deserves somewhere nice." "The nicest," Theodore promised, and he meant it. They left the apartment, and Theodore guided Hazel to where the car was waiting. The driver opened the door and Hazel hesitated. "You hired a car?" "Just for tonight. I wanted it to be special." Theodore held the door for her. "Is that okay?" Hazel smiled and slid into the back seat. "It's more than okay. It's really thoughtful." The drive to Rossini's took 20 minutes through evening traffic. They talked easily, Hazel telling him about a difficult customer earlier that week, Theodore sharing a carefully edited story about a fictional freelance client. The lies were coming easier now, which bothered him more than he wanted to admit. When they pulled up in front of Rossini's, Hazel's eyes went wide. "Theodore, this place is so expensive. We don't have to." "I want to," Theodore said firmly. "You work so hard. You deserve to be treated like you're special. Because you are." The words came out more intensely than he'd intended, but Hazel's expression softened. "Okay. Thank you." Inside, the maitre d' recognized Theodore immediately, but was professional enough not to use his real name. "Mr. Collins, your table is ready. Right this way." They were led to a private corner booth with a view of the city lights. The restaurant was elegant without being stuffy, with white tablecloths and soft lighting that made everything feel intimate. "This is beautiful," Hazel said, looking around with wonder. "You're beautiful," Theodore said before he could stop himself. Hazel met his eyes across the table. "You're pretty smooth for a guy who usually can't pay his dinner bill." Theodore laughed, grateful she could diffuse the tension. "I've been saving. Specifically for this. For you." They ordered and the food was exceptional. But Theodore barely tasted anything. He was too focused on Hazel, on the way she lit up when she laughed, on the thoughtful expressions that crossed her face when she was considering something he said. Over dessert, Hazel asked, "Can I tell you something without sounding completely ridiculous?" "Always. I think about you a lot. Like, more than I probably should for someone I've only known a few weeks. You make me feel like myself but also like a better version of myself. Does that make sense?" Theodore reached across the table and took her hand. "It makes perfect sense. Because I feel exactly the same way." Hazel's fingers curled around his. "I haven't felt this way about anyone since, well, ever really. After my parents died, I've been so focused on surviving and taking care of Terrence that I forgot what it felt like to just be happy." "You make me happy too," Theodore said. And it was true. She made him happier than he'd been in years, maybe ever. They lingered over coffee, neither wanting the evening to end. When the check came, Theodore tried to casually hand over his credit card, but Hazel caught the name on it. "This isn't your regular card," she observed. Theodore's heart skipped. "What?" "This is a different card than the one that got declined. Different bank." She was smiling, not accusing, just curious. "Oh, yeah. This is my emergency card. My savings account. Like I said, I've been saving up for something special." Hazel squeezed his hand. Well, this definitely qualifies. Thank you. This has been the most wonderful night. In the car on the way back to her apartment, Hazel leaned against Theodore's shoulder. He could smell her shampoo, something floral and light. Without thinking, he pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Was that okay? He asked quietly. Hazel tilted her face up. More than okay. They kissed then, slow and sweet, and Theodore felt like the world had narrowed down to just this moment, this woman, this feeling of absolute rightness. When they pulled up to her building, Theodore walked her to her door. They stood in the hallway, neither wanting to say goodnight. I really like you, Hazel said. Like really like you. I really like you too. Same time next week? How about sooner? Theodore suggested. Saturday? We could do something during the day. Whatever you want. I work Saturday morning until 2. I'll pick you up at 2:15. Hazel smiled. Okay. It's a date. She kissed him one more time, quick and promising, then disappeared into her apartment. Theodore stood in the hallway for a moment, feeling like a teenager who just kissed his crush for the first time. His phone buzzed as he was getting back into the car. Richard. How'd it go? Perfect. Absolutely perfect. And you're going to tell her the truth now? Theodore stared out the window at the passing city. Soon. I promise. Theo? I know. Just give me a little more time. But time, as Theodore would soon discover, was the one thing he didn't have. Because the universe has a way of forcing truth into the light, whether we're ready for it or not. Friday morning, Theodore was in his office reviewing contracts when his phone rang. The number was Riverside Diner. Hello? Theodore? Hazel's voice sounded shaky. I'm sorry to call you, I got your number from the call history when you made that reservation. I hope that's okay. Theodore sat up straighter. Of course. What's wrong? Are you okay? I'm fine. It's just, I got evicted. Well, not evicted exactly, but the landlord sold the building and the new owner is raising rent by $400 a month. We can't afford that. We have 30 days to find a new place or pay the increase, and I've been looking all morning and everything in our price range is either too far from Terrence's school or in neighborhoods I don't feel safe in. She took a breath. I'm sorry. I shouldn't be dumping this on you. I needed to tell someone. Theodore's mind raced. $400 a month. That was nothing to him, less than pocket change. He could write her a check right now. He could buy the building. But he couldn't do any of those things as Theodore Collins, struggling web designer. I'm coming over, Theodore said. Right now. We'll figure this out together. You don't have to. I want to. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Theodore grabbed his jacket and headed for the door, stopping only to tell Richard to cancel his afternoon appointments. He drove to Hazel's apartment building, his mind spinning with possible solutions that wouldn't reveal his true identity. Hazel met him at the door. Her eyes were red from crying, but she was clearly trying to hold it together. I'm being dramatic, she said. We'll figure something out. We always do. Theodore pulled her into a hug and she sagged against him. You're allowed to be upset. This is a big deal. I can't lose this place. Terrence is finally settled. He likes his school. His friends are here. If we move across town, he'd have to start over, and with college applications coming up. Her voice broke. Hey, Theodore said softly, tilting her chin up. We're going to fix this. I promise. How? Unless you have $400 extra a month hiding somewhere. An idea struck Theodore. It was risky, but it might work. What if I moved in? Hazel pulled back. What? I could take the couch. Pay a third of the rent, including the increase. It would help you, and honestly, I need a place. I've been staying with a friend, but that's getting old. The lies kept coming, each one easier than the last. Theodore, I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm offering. We'd all benefit. You get help with rent, I get a place to stay, Terrence gets to stay in his school. Everyone wins. Hazel looked torn. Are you sure? Living together is a big step, and we just started dating. I'll be on the couch, Theodore reminded her. And we already spend most of our time together anyway. This just makes it more convenient. He could see her weighing the options, pride against practicality. Finally she nodded. Okay. But we split everything evenly. Rent, utilities, groceries. And you help with chores. Deal. Theodore extended his hand and Hazel shook it, then laughed. We just decided to move in together with a handshake. This is crazy. The best things usually are. Theodore moved in that weekend. He didn't have much to bring, since most of his possessions were in his penthouse across town. He bought some clothes from a department store, brought a laptop, and packed a small bag. Richard thought he'd lost his mind. "You're living on a couch in a tiny apartment while your penthouse sits empty," his assistant said. "This has gone too far. It's temporary. Just until I tell her the truth." "Which is when exactly?" "Soon." But soon turned into a week, then two. Theodore found himself falling into a routine. He'd wake up on the couch, have breakfast with Hazel and Terrence, then go to a coffee shop where he'd work remotely, managing his billion-dollar company from a laptop while pretending to search for web design clients. In the evenings, he'd come home to the small apartment that was starting to feel more like home than his penthouse ever had. He'd help Terrence with calculus homework, which he was actually qualified to do, having majored in mathematics before switching to computer science. He'd cook dinner with Hazel, their shoulders brushing in the tiny kitchen, stealing kisses when Terrence wasn't looking. At night, lying on the lumpy couch, Theodore would hear Hazel getting ready for bed in the next room and wish he could tell her everything. But the fear held him back. What if she was angry about the deception? What if she thought he'd been playing with her feelings? What if she decided she couldn't trust him? So he stayed silent, and the lies piled up like stones, building a wall between who he was and who she thought he was. Meanwhile, Theodore was secretly working on Hazel's dream. He'd contacted the owner of the empty bakery building and negotiated a purchase price. He'd arranged for a shell company to appear interested in supporting small businesses in the neighborhood. He'd created a fictional grant program that would provide startup funding for aspiring entrepreneurs. All Hazel had to do was apply. And if she got it, which she would because Theodore would make sure she did, she'd have everything she needed to open Brooks and Butter. He just had to make it seem legitimate enough that she wouldn't question it. Richard helped him set up the paperwork, creating a convincing paper trail that would stand up to scrutiny. "You know this is getting elaborate," Richard said. "At some point it stops being a test and starts being manipulation. I'm helping her achieve her dream." "How is that manipulation?" "Because she doesn't know it's you helping. She thinks it's some anonymous benefactor. When she finds out the truth, she'll understand," Theodore said, but he wasn't sure he believed it himself. 3 weeks after moving in, Theodore came home to find Hazel practically bouncing with excitement. "You're not going to believe this," she said, grabbing his hands. "There's this grant program for small business owners in the Riverside district. They're offering $50,000 in startup funding plus help with permits and business planning. I applied on a whim and they want to interview me next week." Theodore forced himself to look surprised. "Hazel, that's amazing." "I know. I can't believe it. This could be it, Theodore. This could actually be my bakery." She threw her arms around his neck. "I'm terrified and excited and I can't breathe properly." "You're going to crush that interview," Theodore said, holding her close. "They'd be crazy not to choose you. Will you come with me? For moral support." "Of course. Whatever you need." The interview was set for the following Thursday at an office downtown. Theodore had arranged for one of his business associates, someone Hazel would never connect to him, to conduct it. Everything was in place. All Hazel had to do was be herself, and the grant would be hers. But as the date approached, Theodore's guilt grew heavier. He was essentially rigging her success, making it seem like she'd earned something that he was actually giving her. Was that really any better than just telling her the truth and offering to help? The night before the interview, Theodore found Hazel at the kitchen table at 2 a.m, reviewing her business plan for the 100th time. "Hey," he said softly. "You should sleep. You're going to be exhausted tomorrow." "I can't sleep. What if I mess this up? What if they ask me something I don't know?" Theodore sat down next to her. "Then you'll figure it out. That's what you do, Hazel. You figure things out. You've been doing it your whole life. But this is different. This is my dream. If I fail, you won't fail. And even if you don't get this grant, it doesn't mean you won't open your bakery someday. This is just one opportunity. There will be others." Hazel leaned her head on his shoulder. "When did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise. I just believe in you." They sat there in the quiet kitchen, and Theodore wished he could freeze this moment. Before the interview, before the truth would inevitably come out, before everything got complicated. Just this moment, with Hazel trusting him, believing in his support, thinking they were in this together as equals. Because soon, very soon, she'd learn that they weren't equals at all. That he'd been lying to her from the beginning. And Theodore had no idea if their relationship would survive that revelation. But for tonight, he pushed those thoughts away and just held her, breathing in the scent of her shampoo and memorizing the weight of her head on his shoulder. Tomorrow would bring what it would bring. Tonight they still had this. The interview lasted 2 hours. Theodore waited in the lobby of the downtown office building, watching through the glass door as Hazel presented her business plan with confidence and passion. She dressed professionally in a skirt and blouse borrowed from a friend, her hair pulled back neatly. She looked like someone who could absolutely run a successful bakery, and Theodore felt a surge of pride. When Hazel finally emerged, she looked drained but hopeful. "How'd it go?" Theodore asked, standing up. "I think it went well. They asked good questions, tough questions, but I had answers for most of them. They said they'd let me know within a week." Hazel took his hand. "Thank you for coming with me. It helped knowing you were out here." "I'll always be here for you," Theodore said, and meant it. They took the subway back to the apartment, something Theodore had never done before moving in with Hazel. In his regular life he had drivers and private cars. But riding the subway with Hazel's hand in his, watching the city pass by through the scratched windows, Theodore felt more grounded than he had in years. "What if I don't get it?" Hazel asked quietly as their stop approached. "Then we figure out another way. But I have a good feeling about this." That week passed slowly. Hazel worked her regular shifts at the diner but seemed distracted. Terrence noticed his sister's nervousness and tried to cheer her up with bad jokes and funny videos. Theodore helped where he could, cooking dinner and handling chores without being asked. On Friday evening, exactly 6 days after the interview, Hazel's phone rang from an unknown number. She stared at it for 3 rings before answering, her hand shaking. "Hello? Yes, this is Hazel Brooks." Her eyes went wide. "Really? Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much." She ended the call and just stood there, phone in hand, tears streaming down her face. "Hazel?" Theodore prompted gently. "I got it," she whispered. "I got the grant. They're giving me the money, and they've already identified a potential location. The old bakery building. The one I showed you." She looked up at him. "Theodore, I'm going to open my bakery." Theodore pulled her into his arms as she cried happy tears into his shirt. Terrence came running from his room, and when he heard the news, he picked his sister up and spun her around, both of them laughing. "I can't believe it," Hazel kept saying. "I actually can't believe this is happening." They celebrated with takeout pizza and cheap champagne that Terrence wasn't allowed to drink. Hazel called her best friend from high school, then her aunt in Philadelphia, spreading the good news. Theodore watched her glow with happiness and tried to ignore the guilt eating at him. He'd made this happen. He'd given her this opportunity. But she didn't know that, and part of him wondered if she'd still be this happy if she knew the truth. Over the next month, everything moved quickly. The grant program, which was really Theodore's money being funneled through a shell company, covered the lease on the building, renovations, equipment, and 6 months of operating expenses. Hazel threw herself into the work with an energy Theodore hadn't seen before. She spent her mornings at the diner, her afternoons at the bakery overseeing renovations, and her evenings working on recipes and marketing plans. Theodore helped wherever he could, using his actual business expertise while pretending it was just common sense. "You're really good at this," Hazel commented one evening as Theodore reviewed her financial projections. "For a web designer, you know a lot about business management." "I took some business classes in college," Theodore said, which was true. He just left out the part about having a master's degree from Harvard Business School. "Well, you're invaluable. I don't know what I'd do without you." Hazel kissed his cheek. "Will you help me manage the finances when we open?" "I'll pay you, of course. Maybe we could even build a website together." "I'd love to," Theodore said, meaning it. The idea of working alongside Hazel, of being her partner in this venture, felt right in a way nothing had in years. As the bakery took shape, Theodore found himself spending more time there than at his actual office. Richard was managing most of the day-to-day operations of the tech company, checking in with Theodore via encrypted messages that Hazel thought were from freelance clients. "This can't continue much longer," Richard warned during one of their rare in-person meetings. "The board wants to see you. Investors are asking questions. You can't run a billion-dollar company from a bakery in the Riverside district. Just a few more weeks. Once the bakery opens and things settle down, I'll tell her everything. You've been saying that for 2 months now." I know I have. But the timing has to be right. She's so happy about the bakery. I don't want to ruin that by making it about me." Richard sighed. "You're playing with fire, Theo. The longer you wait, the worse it's going to be when she finds out. And she will find out. People always do." Theodore knew Richard was right, but he couldn't bring himself to confess. Every day with Hazel felt precious. She'd completely integrated him into her life. He helped Terrence prepare for his college entrance exams, taught the kid advanced mathematics that went well beyond his current curriculum. He attended Terrence's robotics club meetings, cheering louder than anyone when the team won a regional competition. And with Hazel, things had deepened into something Theodore had never experienced before. They'd progressed beyond stolen kisses in the kitchen to quiet intimacy late at night when Terrence was asleep. She'd whisper her fears about the bakery, about money, about being a good enough guardian for her brother. Theodore would hold her and promise that everything would work out, knowing he could make absolutely certain it did but unable to tell her how. One Sunday afternoon, about 6 weeks after she'd received the grant, Hazel took Theodore to visit her parents' graves. It was the first time she'd brought anyone except Terrence to this place, and Theodore understood the significance. They stood in front of 2 simple headstones: Beverly Brooks, beloved wife and mother; Marcus Brooks, devoted husband and father. "I wish they could meet you," Hazel said softly. "My mom would have loved you. She always said I needed someone who saw me, really saw me, not just what I could do for them." "That's you. You see me." Theodore's throat tightened. "I do see you. All of you. And I think your parents would be so proud of what you're doing, how you're taking care of Terrence, how you're building something beautiful from your mom's recipes." Hazel turned to him, her eyes searching his face. "I love you. I know it's maybe too soon to say that and you don't have to say it back, but I need you to know. I love you." Theodore's heart hammered in his chest. "I love you too. So much." They kissed there in the cemetery, surrounded by memories and the weight of Hazel's trust. Theodore had never meant anything more than those 3 words, and they terrified him because they made the lies so much worse. That evening, back at the apartment, Theodore made a decision. He would tell her the truth. Not tomorrow, not next week, but soon. As soon as the bakery opened and Hazel's dream was secure, he would sit her down and explain everything. He'd apologize for the deception, make her understand that his feelings were real even if his financial situation wasn't. But first he wanted to give her one more perfect memory. One more moment of pure happiness before everything got complicated. The bakery's grand opening was scheduled for 3 weeks away. Hazel had decided to call it Brooks and Butter, exactly as she'd once dreamed. She'd hired 2 part-time employees, both teenagers from the neighborhood who reminded Theodore of himself at that age, hungry for opportunity. Theodore had secretly ensured they were paid well above minimum wage, and he'd set up a scholarship fund that would help them with college when the time came. Hazel thought the grant program had included workforce development funding. She had no idea it was all coming from Theodore's personal accounts. The renovations were nearly complete. The bakery had gleaming equipment, warm lighting, and a cozy atmosphere that invited people to sit and stay a while. Hazel had painted one wall herself, a soft yellow that she said reminded her of her mother's kitchen. Theodore helped her taste test recipes, gaining 5 pounds in the process and not caring at all. Her cookies were incredible. Her cakes were art. Her bread smelled like heaven. Brooks and Butter was going to be a success, and not just because Theodore was quietly ensuring it. Hazel had real talent. 2 weeks before the opening, Theodore came home to find Terrence sitting at the kitchen table looking worried. "What's wrong?" Theodore asked. "There's this camp for advanced robotics students. It's at MIT for 4 weeks this summer. My teacher submitted my application without telling me and I got in." Terrence showed Theodore the acceptance letter. "But it costs $3,000. There's no way we can afford that, especially with Hazel opening the bakery. I'm going to have to decline." Theodore's first instinct was to write a check immediately. But he couldn't do that as unemployed Theodore Collins. "Have you told Hazel yet?" "No. I don't want to stress her out more. She's already working so hard." "Tell her anyway. She'd want to know. And maybe there's a way to make it work." That night, after Terrence had gone to bed, Theodore called Richard. "I need you to set up another scholarship. MIT Robotics Camp. It needs to look legitimate, like he earned it based on merit. Theo, you're basically paying for this kid's entire future. He's brilliant, Richard. He deserves these opportunities. His sister is working herself to death to give him chances. I'm just helping. By lying to both of them. I'm going to tell them the truth. After the bakery opens. I promise." Richard was quiet for a moment. "I hope you know what you're doing." "I don't," Theodore admitted. "But I can't stop now." The scholarship notification arrived 3 days later. Terrence had supposedly been selected for a merit-based full ride to the MIT camp, including travel and accommodations. When he showed Hazel the letter, she cried with joy and pride. "My baby brother going to MIT," she kept saying, hugging Terrence tight. "Mom and Dad would be so proud." She looked at Theodore over Terrence's shoulder, and Theodore saw such trust and love in her eyes that he nearly confessed everything right then. But Terrence was there, and the moment passed, and Theodore told himself he'd wait just a little longer. The week before the bakery opening, Hazel barely slept. She was at Brooks and Butter from sunrise to midnight, perfecting every detail. Theodore stayed by her side, offering support and encouragement, secretly handling logistics that Hazel didn't have time for. He'd arranged for a food critic from the city's main newspaper to be in the neighborhood on opening day. He'd ensured the local news would cover the story of a young woman achieving her dream despite hardship. He'd contacted every business owner in the Riverside district, encouraging them to stop by and support their new neighbor. All of this, Hazel thought, was either coincidence or her own hard work paying off. She had no idea that Theodore Colton, Billionaire CEO, was orchestrating her success from the shadows. The night before the opening, they lay together on the couch in the dark apartment. Hazel was exhausted but too wired to sleep. "I'm terrified," she whispered. "What if no one comes? What if my baking isn't as good as I think it is? What if this whole thing fails and I've wasted the grant money?" "It's not going to fail," Theodore said with absolute certainty. "You're talented, hardworking, and you're offering something this neighborhood needs. People are going to love Brooks and Butter because they're going to love you. How do you always know the right thing to say?" "Because I know you. And I believe in you." Hazel kissed him slow and deep. "Thank you. For everything. For moving in when we needed help. For supporting this crazy dream. For loving me even though I come with a lot of baggage and complications." "You're not baggage," Theodore said firmly. "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me." It was the truest thing he'd said in months. They fell asleep there on the couch, wrapped around each other, and Theodore dreamed of a future where he could be honest, where he could be fully himself with Hazel, where they could build something real together without the foundation of lies. Tomorrow the bakery would open. And the day after that, or maybe the day after that, Theodore would find the courage to tell her the truth. He had to. Because the lies were becoming unbearable, and the longer he waited, the harder it would be. He just hoped that when the truth came out, the love they'd built would be strong enough to survive it. Because losing Hazel now would destroy him in ways that no failed business or lost fortune ever could. She'd become his home. And he was terrified that when she learned who he really was, she'd ask him to leave. Opening day of Brooks and Butter arrived with perfect spring weather. The sun shone brightly, warming the streets of the Riverside district. Theodore woke early on the lumpy couch to find Hazel already up, pacing the small living room in her pajamas. "What time is it?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. 5:30. "I couldn't sleep." Hazel's hands twisted together anxiously. "What if I'm making a huge mistake? What if?" Theodore stood and pulled her into his arms. "You're going to be amazing. Today is going to be perfect." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I've watched you work harder than anyone I've ever known. Because your baking is incredible. Because you care about what you're doing." He tilted her chin up to look at him. "Trust yourself the way I trust you." Hazel took a deep breath. Okay. I can do this." They arrived at Brooks and Butter at 7 in the morning. The two teenage employees, Jessica and Ramon, were already there, nervous but excited. The bakery gleamed with fresh paint and polished surfaces. Display cases waited to be filled with the pastries and bread Hazel had been preparing for days. Theodore helped arrange chairs and tables while Hazel worked in the kitchen with her staff. The smell of fresh bread and cinnamon rolls filled the air, and Theodore watched through the pass-through window as Hazel moved with confidence and purpose. This was where she belonged, in her element, creating something beautiful. At 9 o'clock they opened the doors. For the first 10 minutes no one came. Hazel stood behind the counter, her smile becoming more forced with each passing minute. "It's still early," Theodore said. "People are just waking up." Then at 9:15 the bell above the door chimed. An elderly woman entered, looking around with interest. "I heard there was a new bakery," she said. "What do you recommend?" Hazel's face lit up. "Everything is fresh from the oven this morning. The cinnamon rolls are a family recipe from my mother. They're my personal favorite." The woman ordered 2 cinnamon rolls and coffee. She took a bite and her eyes widened. "Oh my, this is exceptional." Within an hour word had spread. People started trickling in, then arriving in small groups. By noon there was a line out the door. The food critic that Theodore had arranged to accidentally discover Brooks and Butter spent 45 minutes sampling different items, making notes and chatting with Hazel about her background. Theodore worked the register while Hazel and her staff kept up with the orders. He watched her confidence grow with each compliment, each satisfied customer, each exclamation over how delicious everything was. Terrence showed up after school with 5 of his friends, all of them ordering multiple items and taking pictures for social media. The local news crew arrived at 2, just as Theodore had arranged, interviewing Hazel about achieving her dream. "I couldn't have done this without my support system," Hazel said to the camera, her eyes finding Theodore's. "Especially my partner, Theodore, who believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself." Theodore felt his throat tighten. Partner. She'd called him her partner, and he realized that's exactly what he wanted to be. Not her secret benefactor, not someone helping from the shadows, but her real partner in every way. By the time they closed at 7 that evening, they'd sold out of almost everything. The cash register was full, the reviews on social media were glowing, and Hazel looked exhausted but radiant. "We did it," she said, collapsing into one of the chairs after the staff left. "We actually did it." Theodore sat across from her. "You did it? This was all you?" "No. It was us. You helped with so much, Theodore. The business plan, the finances, the website, all of it. This is our success." Guilt twisted in Theodore's stomach, but he pushed it aside. Tonight was about celebrating Hazel's achievement. Tomorrow or the next day he'd find the right moment to tell her everything. They walked home through the warm evening, Hazel's hand in his, both of them too tired to talk much. But when they reached their building, Hazel stopped. "I don't want to go inside yet," she said. "Let's walk to the river." The riverside park was quiet at this hour, just a few joggers and people walking dogs. Hazel led them to a bench overlooking the water, the same bench where they'd had coffee that first Saturday afternoon months ago. "Do you remember the first time we sat here?" Hazel asked. "You bought me that expensive coffee and I told you about my bakery dream. It felt so impossible then. Like something I'd never actually achieve." "I knew you'd achieve it," Theodore said. "Even then I could see how determined you were." Hazel turned to face him fully. "I need to tell you something and I need you to just listen, okay? Don't interrupt, because if you do I might lose my nerve." Theodore's heart began to race. "Okay. I've been thinking a lot about us, about where this is going. When you first showed up at the diner that night with your declined credit card, I never imagined." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I've dated before. Not much because I've been so busy with work and Terrence, but enough to know what it feels like when something is just okay. This isn't just okay. This is everything." Theodore reached for her hand, but Hazel shook her head. "Let me finish. When I told you I loved you at my parents' graves, I meant it. But I don't think you really understood how much I meant it. I'm not good at flowery speeches or romantic gestures. I'm practical and tired and usually covered in flour. But you make me feel seen in a way no one ever has. You make me feel like I'm enough, exactly as I am." "Hazel. I know we've only been together a few months. I know we're living on a couch in a tiny apartment and neither of us has much money and life is complicated. But I don't care about any of that. I want to build a life with you. Not someday, not when things are easier. No. Messy and imperfect and real." She took both his hands. "I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm all in. Completely, terrifyingly all in. And I need to know if you feel the same way." Theodore felt tears prick his eyes. This brave, beautiful woman was laying her heart completely bare, offering him everything without reservation. And here he was, still hiding behind lies and half-truths. "I feel the same way," Theodore said, his voice rough with emotion. "More than the same way. Hazel, you've changed everything for me. Before I met you, I thought I knew what I wanted from life, what mattered. But you showed me that I didn't know anything. You showed me what it means to be truly generous, truly kind, truly strong. You work harder than anyone I've ever met, and you still find energy to help others. You sacrificed everything for your brother without hesitation. You paid for a stranger's meal when you could barely afford it yourself. You're the most remarkable person I've ever known." "Theodore." "No, let me finish. I love you. I love you so much it terrifies me because I've never felt this way about anyone. You're right that we haven't been together that long, and yes, life is complicated and messy. But I don't care either. I want the mess. I want the complications. I want you every day exactly as you are." He stood up and pulled Hazel to her feet. "I'm all in too. Completely, terrifyingly all in." They kissed then, deep and passionate, pouring months of growing feelings into that one kiss. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. "I have something to tell you," Theodore started, deciding this was the moment. "About me, about my past." But before he could continue, Hazel's phone rang. She glanced at it, ready to ignore the call, but her expression changed. "It's Terrence. He never calls this late." She answered. "Hey, what? Slow down. What do you mean? Oh my God. Okay. We're coming right now." Hazel's face had gone pale. We have to go. Now. Terrence is at the hospital. He collapsed at his friend's house. They think it might be his appendix. All thoughts of confession fled from Theodore's mind. They ran to the nearest taxi stand, Hazel giving the driver directions to County General Hospital. She was shaking and Theodore held her hand tightly. He's going to be okay, Theodore said. Appendicitis is common and they know how to treat it. What if it's not appendicitis? What if it's something worse? I can't lose him, Theodore. I can't. He's all I have left of my family. You're not going to lose him. And you have me too. You have me and I'm not going anywhere. They arrived at the hospital and rushed to the emergency room. A nurse directed them to the waiting area where Terrence's friend and his mother were sitting. The mother, Mrs. Davidson, explained what had happened. They were playing video games when Terrence suddenly said his stomach hurt really badly. Then he passed out. The ambulance brought him here about 20 minutes ago. The doctors are examining him now. Hazel sank into a chair, her face in her hands. Theodore sat beside her, one arm around her shoulders, feeling helpless. Minutes stretched into an hour, then two. Finally, a doctor emerged. Family of Terrence Brooks? Hazel jumped up. That's me. I'm his sister. Is he okay? He's stable. It is appendicitis and we need to operate fairly soon. It hasn't ruptured yet, but we don't want to wait. The surgery is routine, but there are always risks. Do you have insurance? Hazel's face fell. We have basic coverage through the state. Will that cover it? Most of it, but there will be out-of-pocket costs. Probably around $5,000. $5,000. Theodore could pay it without blinking. But Theodore Collins, unemployed web designer, could not. I'll figure it out, Hazel said, though Theodore could hear the panic in her voice. Do whatever he needs. Please. I'll find the money somehow. The doctor nodded and went back through the doors. Hazel turned to Theodore, tears streaming down her face. I don't have $5,000. The bakery took every penny I had. I can't. I don't know what to do. Theodore pulled her close, his mind racing. This was it. The moment where he had to choose between maintaining his deception or helping Terrence. There was no choice really. Terrence's health came first. I'll take care of it, Theodore said. How? Theodore, you don't have that kind of money any more than I do. Theodore took a deep breath. This wasn't how he wanted to tell her, but Terrence needed surgery, and Hazel needed to stop worrying about money. Hazel, I need to tell you something. I should have told you months ago, but I was scared and stupid and I kept putting it off. The truth is, Mr. Collins? A hospital administrator approached them. We have a problem with the insurance. Could you come to my office to sort out the paperwork? Theodore started to correct the name to say his real last name was Colton, but Hazel was already pulling away, confused. Collins? Your last name is Collins? Yes, Wait, why does that matter right now? Terrence needs surgery. I know. You're right. We'll figure everything out later. Go deal with the paperwork. I need to see my brother. The administrator led Theodore to a small office. As soon as the door closed, Theodore pulled out his real wallet from his jacket's inner pocket where he'd hidden it months ago. Inside was his black American Express card, the one with no spending limit. Use this for all expenses related to Terrence Brooks' care, Theodore said. Whatever it takes. The best surgeon you have, a private room, everything. The administrator looked at the name on the card, then at Theodore, recognition dawning. Mr. Colton? Theodore Colton? Yes. And I need you to keep that information confidential for now. Bill everything to this card, but list the patient's guardian as the payer on all paperwork. Can you do that? Of course, sir. We'll take excellent care of your friend. Theodore returned to the waiting room to find Hazel had been allowed to see Terrence briefly before surgery. When she came back out, her eyes were red but calmer. He's scared, but he's trying to be brave. The surgeon seems good. She looked at Theodore. Did you sort out the paperwork? All handled. Don't worry about the money. I took care of it. Hazel frowned. How? Theodore, I know you've been job hunting, but $5,000? I had some savings. An emergency fund. Terrence is an emergency. It wasn't technically a lie, but it wasn't the full truth either. Hazel threw her arms around him. Thank you. I'll pay you back. Every penny. I swear. Don't worry about that now. Let's just focus on Terrence. They waited another hour before Terrence was taken into surgery. The procedure took 90 minutes that felt like days. Theodore got them coffee and sandwiches from the cafeteria that neither of them ate. They sat in uncomfortable plastic chairs, holding hands, waiting. Finally, the surgeon emerged, still in his scrubs. The surgery went perfectly. The appendix was inflamed but intact. We got it out cleanly. Terrence will need to stay here for 2 or 3 days for observation, but he should make a full recovery. Hazel burst into tears of relief, and Theodore held her while she cried. When she finally pulled back, she looked up at him with such trust and love that Theodore felt his heart break a little. "I don't know what I would do without you," Hazel said. "You're my rock, my partner, my everything." Theodore knew he should tell her the truth right now, explain everything, but how could he? Her brother had just come out of surgery. She was emotionally exhausted. This wasn't the time. Tomorrow, he told himself. Or the next day, when Terrence was fully recovered. He'd find the right moment, the right words, the right way to explain that everything she thought she knew about him was a carefully constructed lie. But deep down, Theodore was starting to realize there might never be a right time. That any time would be the wrong time. That he'd waited too long and the deception had grown too large to ever properly undo. For now, though, he pushed those thoughts aside. Hazel needed him and he would be there for her. The truth could wait just a little bit longer. Would have to. Terrence spent 3 days in the hospital recovering from his appendectomy. Theodore visited every day after work, bringing the teenager books, downloading new games on his tablet, helping him keep up with schoolwork so he wouldn't fall behind. "You don't have to do all this," Terrence said on the second day, but he looked grateful. "I want to," Theodore said simply. "Besides, someone needs to make sure you actually read these chapters for English class." They fell into an easy rhythm. Theodore would arrive in the early evening, after managing his company remotely from coffee shops and park benches. He'd spend an hour with Terrence, then sit with Hazel until visiting hours ended. Hazel was splitting her time between the hospital, the bakery, and trying to catch a few hours of sleep at home. On the third day, as the doctors were preparing to discharge Terrence, a woman in an expensive suit entered the hospital room. She introduced herself as Patricia Morrison from Morrison Ventures. "I apologize for the intrusion during your recovery," Patricia said to Terrence, then turned to Hazel. "Ms. Brooks, I'm here on behalf of a small business investment group. We're looking for promising local entrepreneurs to support, and your bakery came to our attention. Would you be interested in discussing an investment opportunity?" Hazel blinked in surprise. Yes? What kind of investment? Perhaps we could talk in private? When you have time, of course." They scheduled a meeting for the following week at Brooks and Butter. After Patricia left, Hazel looked at Theodore with wide eyes. "Did that just happen? A real investor wants to talk to me?" Theodore smiled, though guilt churned in his stomach. Patricia Morrison was another piece of his elaborate deception, a colleague he'd asked to pose as an investor. The investment would be more of his money, disguised as legitimate business interest. "Your bakery is doing great," Theodore said. "Word is spreading. It makes sense that investors would notice." When Terrence was finally released, Theodore helped get him settled at home. The teenager was under strict orders to rest for 2 weeks, which meant missing school and the first session of his robotics club's competition preparation. "This is so frustrating," Terrence complained from his position on the couch. "We're supposed to start building our competition robot next week." "You'll catch up," Theodore assured him. "Your team can take notes and you can contribute remotely. I'll help you." And he did. Every evening, Theodore would sit with Terrence, helping him design components and troubleshoot problems via video calls with his team. It reminded Theodore of his own teenage years, when coding and building things were his escape from the uncertainties of foster care. "You're really good at this," Terrence observed one evening. "Like really good. Are you sure you were just a web designer?" Theodore felt the trap before he fell into it. "I dabbled in a lot of things in college. Robotics was one of them." "You should have been an engineer. You're better at this than my teacher." "I'm happy where I ended up," Theodore said, which was true. Despite the lies, despite the complications, being part of this family felt right in a way nothing else ever had. The meeting with Patricia Morrison took place on a Tuesday afternoon. Brooks and Butter was closed for its regular day off, giving them privacy. Hazel had dressed professionally, her business plan printed and organized in a folder. Theodore sat beside her, there for moral support. Patricia laid out an impressive-sounding proposal. Morrison Ventures wanted to invest $50,000 in exchange for a 20% stake in the business. They'd provide mentorship, help with expansion planning, and connect Hazel with suppliers and distributors. "This would allow you to scale much faster than you could on your own," Patricia explained. "We see real potential here. Brooks and Butter could be the first of several locations. Maybe even franchise opportunities down the line." Hazel's eyes shone with excitement, but Theodore could see her practical side engaging as well. What would I have to give up? Besides the 20% stake. Nothing in terms of control. You'd maintain full operational authority. We'd simply be partners, offering guidance when you want it and resources when you need them. After Patricia left, Hazel turned to Theodore. What do you think? Is this too good to be true? Theodore wanted to tell her yes, it was literally too good to be true because he'd orchestrated the entire thing. Instead, he reviewed the paperwork carefully, making a show of analyzing the terms. It seems legitimate, he said. The terms are actually quite generous. Most investors would want a larger stake or more control. But Hazel, you don't have to decide right now. Take some time to think about it. Are you kidding? This is incredible. With $50,000 I could expand the kitchen, hire more staff, maybe even start doing wholesale. This could change everything. She grabbed his hands. We could do this together. I want you to be part of it, officially. Not just as my boyfriend who helps out, but as a real partner. We could build something amazing. Theodore's heart swelled and broke at the same time. I'd love that. But Hazel, there's something I need to tell you first. About my past, about who I really am. Hazel's phone rang. She glanced at it and grimaced. It's Linda from the diner. I have to take this. She never calls unless it's important. She answered, listened, and her face fell. Oh no. Okay. Yes, I'll be there in 20 minutes. She ended the call and grabbed her jacket. Linda's mother had a stroke. She has to fly to Cleveland tonight. She's asking if I can cover her shifts for the next week, maybe 2. I can't say no, Theodore. She's been so good to me. Of course you can't. Go. We'll talk later. Hazel kissed him quickly and rushed out, leaving Theodore alone in the quiet bakery. He sat there for a long time, surrounded by the fruits of Hazel's hard work, knowing that most of her success was built on his lies. Richard had been right. This had gone too far. But Theodore couldn't see a way out now. If he told Hazel the truth, she'd realize the grant was him, the investment opportunity was him, probably even the scholarship for Terrence was him. She'd feel manipulated, controlled, like he'd been playing God with her life. But if he didn't tell her, the lies would keep compounding. Eventually she'd find out anyway. The longer he waited, the worse it would be. Over the next week, Hazel worked herself to exhaustion. She opened Brooks and Butter at 6 in the morning, worked until 2, then headed to Riverside Diner for the evening shift until midnight. Theodore tried to help by managing the bakery's late afternoon operations, serving the after-school crowd and handling cleanup. Terrence was finally back at school but still taking it easy. Theodore made sure the kid ate properly, helped with homework, and drove him to physical therapy appointments. They'd become close, and Theodore found himself thinking of Terrence as the little brother he'd never had. One evening, while waiting for Hazel to come home from her double shift, Terrence looked up from his calculus homework. Can I ask you something personal? Sure, Theodore said, though he felt immediately wary. What are your intentions with my sister? Theodore set down the dish he was washing. What do you mean? Are you serious about her? Because Hazel acts tough, but she's been through a lot. Our parents dying, having to raise me, working constantly just to keep us afloat. She doesn't let people in easily. But she let you in. So I need to know if you're going to stick around or if you're going to break her heart. The directness of the question caught Theodore off guard. This was a 16-year-old kid, but he was speaking with the protectiveness of someone much older. I love your sister, Theodore said honestly. I plan to stick around as long as she'll have me. Even though she's always working? Even though we don't have money? Even though dating her means dealing with me too? Especially because of all those things. Your sister is the strongest, most incredible person I've ever met. And you're a good kid who's going places. I'm lucky to be part of this family, not the other way around. Terrence studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. Just don't hurt her. She pretends like she's fine with everything, but I hear her crying sometimes at night when she thinks I'm asleep. She worries about money, about me, about the future. She deserves someone who makes her feel safe. I'll do everything I can to make her feel safe, Theodore promised. And he meant it even as he knew his lies were the opposite of safe. They were a ticking time bomb. That weekend, Hazel finally had a day off from both jobs. She slept until noon, then woke up to find Theodore had cleaned the entire apartment and was making her favorite breakfast. What's all this? She asked, padding into the kitchen in her pajamas. You've been working too hard. I wanted to do something nice. They ate together, and Theodore watched the tension slowly leave Hazel's shoulders. After breakfast, she curled up next to him on the couch. I've been thinking about Patricia's investment offer, Hazel said. I want to accept it. With that money and Linda's shifts, I can save up enough to hire a full-time assistant manager. That would free up my time to focus on growth. Maybe by next year we could look at a second location. That's a great plan. And I want you to be my official business partner. Not just someone who helps out but listed on all the paperwork. We could do a 60-40 split with you having 40%. You've put in so much work already and you have all the business knowledge I need. What do you think? Theodore's chest tightened. She was offering him a real partnership in something she'd built, something that only existed because of his manipulation. How could he accept that? Hazel, I can't take 40% of your business. You built this. It's your dream. But I couldn't have done it without you. Come on, Theodore. We're a team. Let's make it official. Before Theodore could respond, his phone rang. Richard. The call he'd been dreading. I'm sorry, I have to take this, Theodore said, stepping into the bedroom. Theo, we have a major problem, Richard said urgently. The Forbes issue hits newsstands tomorrow. The one with your profile. They moved up the publication date because of some tech industry scandal they wanted to include. Your face is going to be on the cover, listed as one of the top 10 CEOs under 40. It's going to be everywhere. Theodore's blood ran cold. Can we stop it? It's already printed. There's no stopping it now. You need to tell Hazel today. Right now. Before she sees it and finds out some other way. Theodore ended the call and stood there, staring at his reflection in the bedroom mirror. This was it. The moment he'd been dreading and postponing for months. There was no more time. No more excuses. He walked back into the living room where Hazel was scrolling through her phone, probably looking at bakery suppliers. She looked up and smiled, and Theodore memorized that smile, afraid it might be the last time he'd see it. Hazel, we need to talk. It's important. She set down her phone, concern crossing her face. What's wrong? You look serious. Theodore sat down across from her and took a deep breath. There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you months ago, but I was too scared and too stupid to be honest. And now it's gotten so complicated that I don't know how to explain it without you hating me. Theodore, you're scaring me. What is it? My name isn't Theodore Collins, he started. I mean, it is Theodore, but my last name is Colton. And I'm not a struggling freelance web designer. I'm the CEO of Colton Technologies. I have a net worth of about $3 billion. I've been lying to you since the day we met. Hazel stared at him, not comprehending. What are you talking about? The night my credit card was declined at the diner, that was a test. I've been pretending to be broke for 2 years, testing women to see if they'd love me for who I am rather than what I have. You were number 25. And when you paid for my meal without hesitation, when you showed me kindness without expecting anything in return, I knew you were different. But instead of telling you the truth, I kept lying. I kept testing. I wanted to make absolutely sure. You've been lying to me for months? Hazel's voice was quiet, dangerous. About who you are. About your whole life. Yes. And it gets worse. The grant you received? That was me. The investment opportunity? Also me. Terrence's robotics camp scholarship? Me. The reason your bakery has been so successful? Because I've been manipulating everything behind the scenes to ensure it. Hazel stood up abruptly, her face pale. You've been controlling my life? Making me think I was succeeding on my own when it was all you? No, Hazel, you are succeeding on your own. Your talent is real. Your hard work is real. I just made sure you had the opportunities you deserved. You made sure. Hazel's voice rose. You don't get to decide what I deserve. You don't get to play God with my life and then act like you were doing me a favor. I know how it sounds. But I love you. That part was never a lie. Everything I feel for you is completely real. How can I believe that when everything else was fake? Our whole relationship is built on lies, Theodore. Or should I call you Mr. Colton? I don't even know who you really are. I'm the same person. The person who helped Terrence with his homework, who sits with you at the bakery, who loves you more than anything. That person is real. Hazel laughed bitterly. The person who moved into my apartment pretending to need help with rent? The person who let me worry about money while sitting on billions of dollars? The person who watched me work myself to exhaustion and never once thought to just be honest. I wanted to tell you so many times. I almost did several times. But I was terrified of losing you. So instead you kept lying. For months. While I fell in love with someone who doesn't even exist. Tears were streaming down Hazel's face now. I trusted you. I told you things I've never told anyone. I let you into my life, into my family. And all of it was based on a lie. Not all of it. My feelings for you are real. The way I feel about Terrence is real. The life we were building. We weren't building anything, Hazel cut him off. You were building a fantasy where you got to play pretend, and I was just your unknowing co-star. Did you enjoy it? Watching me struggle while you knew you could fix everything with a phone call? It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Explain to me how any of this was okay. Theodore tried to find the words, but they all sounded hollow. I thought I was protecting myself. After my divorce, after being used for my money so many times, I just wanted to know that someone could love me for me. So you lied to find true love? Do you hear how messed up that is? Hazel wrapped her arms around herself. You know what the worst part is? I would have loved you anyway. Rich or poor, CEO or web designer. I fell in love with the person you showed me, the person who was kind and supportive and real. Or at least I thought he was real. But that person was just a character you were playing. That's not true. I never faked who I am, just what I have. Those things are connected, Theodore. Who you are includes your choices, your values, your integrity. And you chose to lie. To me, to Terrence, for months. That tells me exactly who you are. Theodore felt panic rising in his chest. This was going even worse than he'd feared. Please, Hazel. Let me make this right. I'll do whatever it takes. You can't make this right. You can't undo months of lies with an apology. Hazel walked to the door and opened it. I need you to leave. Now. Hazel. Get out. Please. I can't even look at you right now. Theodore stood there, desperate to say something that would fix this, but there was nothing. He destroyed everything with his deception. Slowly he walked to the door, pausing in front of Hazel. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Hazel didn't respond. She just stared past him, her face streaked with tears. Theodore left the apartment, hearing the door close firmly behind him. He stood in the hallway feeling like his world had just ended. And maybe it had. Because the one thing that had made him truly happy, truly alive, was now lost. And it was entirely his own fault. Theodore pulled out his phone and called Richard. She knows. I told her everything and she kicked me out. I'm sorry, Theo. What are you going to do? I don't know. But I have to fix this. I have to make her understand. Maybe you need to give her space. Let her process everything. But Theodore wasn't ready to give up. He couldn't. Hazel was his future, his home, his everything. He'd spent years looking for real love and he'd found it. He just had to make her see that despite the lies, what they had was worth fighting for. He just hoped it wasn't too late. Theodore spent that night in his penthouse for the first time in months. The space felt cold and empty, nothing like the small apartment that had become home. He didn't sleep. He just sat by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city lights and replaying every moment of his confession in his mind. By morning, the Forbes issue had hit newsstands. His phone was flooded with messages from business associates, investors, and press requests. His face stared back from magazine covers across the city. Theodore Colton, the billionaire CEO revolutionizing tech. Richard showed up at 7 with coffee and bagels that Theodore didn't touch. The press knows something is up, Richard said. Apparently there are photos of you at some diner in Riverside District, and people are putting together that you've been living a double life. They're trying to figure out why. I don't care about the press. You should. This could affect the company. The board is asking questions. Let them ask. None of it matters without Hazel. Richard sat down across from him. Give her time. She's hurt and angry, which she has every right to be. But maybe once the shock wears off, she'll be willing to listen. What if she's not? What if I ruin the best thing in my life permanently? Then you'll learn from it. And you'll do better next time. There won't be a next time. It's her or no one. Theodore spent the next 3 days trying to give Hazel space while also showing her he wasn't giving up. He had flowers delivered to Brooks and butter, which she sent back. He tried calling, but she didn't answer. He sent a long email explaining everything, but she didn't respond. On the 4th day, Theodore was in a board meeting when his phone buzzed with a number he didn't recognize. He normally wouldn't have answered during a meeting, but something made him excuse himself. Hello? Theodore? It's Terrence. The teenager's voice was shaking. Something's wrong. Hazel collapsed at the bakery. The ambulance just took her to County General. I'm on my way there now, but I'm scared. Can you come? I'm on my way. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Theodore didn't bother with explanations to the board. He just grabbed his jacket and ran. His driver broke every speed limit getting him to the hospital, and Theodore burst through the emergency room doors to find Terrence sitting in the waiting area, tears streaming down his face. What happened? Theodore asked, sitting beside him. I don't know. She's been working so hard since you left. Like even more than before. She wasn't sleeping, barely eating. This morning at the bakery, Jessica said Hazel just suddenly got really pale and collapsed. They called 911 and... Terrence wiped his eyes. I don't know what to do. I can't lose her too. I can't. Theodore put his arm around the kid. You're not going to lose her. Hazel is strong. She's going to be okay. A doctor appeared looking for family of Hazel Brooks. Theodore and Terrence stood up immediately. I'm her brother, Terrence said. This is our. He looked at Theodore helplessly. I'm family, Theodore said firmly. What's her condition? She's stable now, but she's severely dehydrated and malnourished. Her blood pressure was dangerously low. From what I understand, she's been working excessive hours with inadequate sleep and nutrition. Her body simply gave out. The doctor looked at Terrence. Does she have a history of overworking herself? She works 2 jobs, Terrence said quietly. 3 if you count the bakery. She's always exhausted. We're going to keep her overnight for observation and 4 fluids. She needs rest, real rest. And she needs to eat properly. I understand she's taking care of you alone, but she can't take care of you if she doesn't take care of herself first. After the doctor left, Terrence turned to Theodore. This is my fault. If I didn't need college money, if I wasn't so expensive. This is not your fault, Theodore said firmly. Your sister loves you. She works hard because she wants to give you opportunities. That's her choice and it's a good one. But you're right that she can't keep going like this. I know you guys broke up or whatever, but can you please just be here for her? She's been so sad since you left, and I think that's part of why she's been working so hard. To distract herself. Theodore's heart clenched. I'll be here. As long as she'll let me. They were allowed to see Hazel after she was moved to a regular room. She was awake but looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, for lines running into her arm. When she saw Theodore, her expression hardened. What are you doing here? Terrence called me. I wanted to make sure you're okay. I'm fine. You can leave. Hazel. Terrence started, but she cut him off. Not now, Terrence. I'm too tired to deal with this. Then don't deal with it, Theodore said. Just rest. I'll wait outside. But I'm not leaving the hospital until I know you're okay. Hazel didn't argue further, just closed her eyes. Theodore went back to the waiting room while Terrence stayed with his sister. Over the next several hours, a steady stream of people came to check on Hazel. Linda from the diner arrived with home-cooked soup. Jessica and Ramon from Brooks and Butter brought flowers. Mrs. Davidson, Terrence's friend's mother, stopped by with magazines. All of them looked at Theodore with curiosity and wariness, clearly having heard about what happened. But none of them asked him to leave, perhaps recognizing that despite everything, he cared about Hazel. As evening approached, Terrence came out to the waiting room. She wants to see you, he said. She's still mad, but she wants to talk. Theodore entered Hazel's room cautiously. She looked better with the 4 fluids, some color back in her cheeks, but there was still exhaustion in every line of her body. The doctor says I've been running myself into the ground, Hazel said without preamble. He says I need to cut back on work and take better care of myself. He lectured me for 20 minutes about the dangers of chronic stress. He's right. I know he's right. But Theodore, I have bills. I have Terrence to take care of. I can't just stop working. Yes, you can. At least partially. Theodore pulled a chair close to the bed. Quit the diner. Focus on Brooks and Butter and nothing else. I'll help with expenses. I can't take your money. Not after everything. It's not about the money. It's about you not killing yourself. Hazel, when Terrence called and said you'd collapsed. Theodore's voice broke. I've never been so scared in my life. Hazel looked away. I don't want to need you. I don't want to need anyone. That's why I work so hard, so I can stand on my own. But you don't have to stand alone. That's what people who love each other do. They support each other. Do you love me? Really? Or was that part of the test too? Theodore moved closer, making sure she could see his eyes. I love you. More than I've ever loved anyone. That was never a lie, never a game. The test ended the night you paid for my meal. Everything after that was real. But you kept lying. I did. And I was wrong. I was so terrified of being hurt again that I hurt you instead. There's no excuse for that. But Hazel, please believe me when I say that my love for you is the most real thing in my life. Hazel's eyes filled with tears. I loved you too. I still do, which makes this so much worse. I fell in love with who I thought you were, but I don't even know who the real you is. The real me is the person who sat with Terrence in the hospital. The real me is the person who helped you taste test recipes at 2 in the morning. The real me is the person who wants to spend the rest of his life making you happy. Theodore took her hand carefully. The money doesn't change who I am, Hazel. It just changes what I can do. But I'm still the same person who loves you. You lied to me for months, Theodore. You let me think I was succeeding on my own when you were pulling strings behind the scenes. How am I supposed to trust you again? I don't know. But I'll do whatever it takes to earn that trust back. I'll be completely transparent from now on. No more secrets, no more tests, just honesty. Give me a chance to prove that the person you fell in love with is real. Hazel closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. I'm too tired to make any decisions right now. I just want to sleep. Then sleep. I'll be here when you wake up. Theodore, I don't think. I'll be in the waiting room. Not going anywhere. Just in case you need anything. Theodore left the room and returned to the waiting area. Terrence was texting someone, probably his friends, updating them on Hazel's condition. Is she okay? The teenager asked. She will be. But she needs rest, real rest. And she needs to stop working herself into the ground. Can you help her do that? Even if you guys aren't together anymore? Theodore looked at this kid who'd become like a brother to him. I'll always help her. Always. That's not going to change no matter what happens between us. Terrence nodded. Good. Because she needs you. She won't admit it, but she does. They spent the night at the hospital. Theodore dozed in uncomfortable waiting room chairs, checking on Hazel every few hours. Each time she was sleeping, the phone doing its work, restoring what weeks of overwork had depleted. In the morning, the doctor cleared Hazel to go home with strict instructions. No work for a week, reduced hours after that, proper meals and sleep, follow-up appointments to check her stress levels. Someone needs to make sure she follows these instructions, the doctor said, looking between Theodore and Terrence. She has a tendency to ignore medical advice. I'll make sure, Terrence said. I'll watch her like a hawk. Good man. The doctor turned to Theodore. And you should make sure she has help managing her workload. Whatever caused this level of stress needs to be addressed. Theodore nodded. It will be. When they were wheeling Hazel out in the mandatory wheelchair, Theodore walked beside them to where his car was waiting. Hazel started to protest about taking his car, but Terrence cut her off. Hazel, just let him help. Please. You collapsed yesterday. Can you just accept help for once in your life? Hazel looked at her brother in surprise, then sighed. Okay. Fine. The drive to their apartment was quiet. When they arrived, Theodore helped Hazel upstairs despite her insistence she could walk fine. Once inside, he got her settled on the couch with pillows and a blanket. I'm calling Linda to let her know you're quitting the diner, Theodore said. Theodore, you can't. Yes, I can. You're not working there anymore. Brooks and butter is enough. And before you argue about money, I'm setting up a trust for Terrence's college fund. Full ride, all expenses, no strings attached. That way you can stop worrying about it. Hazel stared at him. I told you I can't take your money. It's not for you. It's for Terrence. And you're not taking it, you're accepting it. There's a difference. Theodore knelt beside the couch. Hazel, I know I hurt you. I know I broke your trust. But please let me do this one thing. Let me take away some of the pressure you've been under. Not because I'm trying to buy your forgiveness, but because I can't stand to watch you destroy yourself. If I accept this, it doesn't mean we're back together. I know. It doesn't mean I've forgiven you. I know that too. Hazel studied his face for a long moment. Why are you doing this? Because I love you. And even if you never forgive me, even if we never get back together, I'm still going to love you. That doesn't just go away. Hazel's eyes filled with tears again. This is so hard. I want to forgive you. Part of me wants to just say it's okay and move forward. But I'm so hurt, Theodore. You made me doubt everything. Every moment we shared, every conversation we had, I keep wondering what was real and what was part of your test. It was all real. The test ended that first night. Everything after that was me falling in love with you. But you kept lying. I did. And I'll regret that for the rest of my life. Theodore reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know that. But I'm asking for it anyway. I'm asking for a chance to prove that I can be the man you deserve. Honest, transparent, real. No more games, no more tests. Just me loving you for the rest of our lives if you'll let me. Hazel looked at their intertwined hands. I need time. I need to figure out who you really are and if I can trust you again. But Theodore, I don't want to lose you. Despite everything, I don't want to lose what we had. You won't lose me. I'm not going anywhere. Can we just take it slow? Start over, maybe? Get to know each other as who we really are. Relief flooded through Theodore. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was hope. We can take it as slow as you need. Whatever you want. Terrence appeared from his room. So are you guys getting back together or what? Because the tension is killing me. Despite everything, Hazel laughed. We're figuring it out. Now go do your homework. I'm just saying life's too short to be mad at people you love. That's what Dad always said. After Terrence left, Hazel looked at Theodore. He's right, you know. Life is too short. I've lost enough people. I don't want to lose you too, even if you did lie to me for months. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making it up to you. That's a long time. I'm counting on it. They sat together on the couch, not quite back to where they'd been, but not as far apart as they'd been either. It was a start. A fragile, uncertain start, but a start nonetheless. And for now that was enough. The next few weeks were strange. Theodore wasn't living in the apartment anymore, he'd returned to his penthouse, but he visited every day. He and Hazel were technically dating again, but it felt different. More careful. Like they were both handling something fragile that had been broken and badly glued back together. Hazel followed her doctor's orders and took the week off from both jobs. Theodore arranged for Brooks and Butter to be managed by a professional he hired, someone with experience running bakeries. Hazel had been skeptical at first, but the woman, Carol, proved to be capable and genuinely interested in helping the business grow. She's great, Hazel admitted one evening as Theodore brought over dinner. She's already streamlined our ordering process and suggested 3 new wholesale accounts. See? Accepting help isn't weakness. I know. I'm learning. Hazel picked at her food. Theodore, I've been thinking. I want to know everything about your real life. Not just the CEO stuff, but where you came from. Your childhood, your marriage, why you started this whole test thing. I need to understand. Theodore had been expecting this. Okay. What do you want to know? Start at the beginning. So Theodore told her. He told her about growing up in foster care after his mother died and his father disappeared. He told her about being moved from home to home, never quite fitting in anywhere. He told her about finding solace in computers and coding, about teaching himself programming from library books. I was 16 when I built my first functioning program, Theodore said. It was a simple scheduling app for my foster home. The social worker was so impressed she helped me get a scholarship to college. That's where everything changed. He told her about studying computer science, about working 3 jobs to pay for what the scholarship didn't cover, about graduating top of his class and getting recruited by a major tech company. I was 22 when I realized I could do it better myself, Theodore continued. So I quit, maxed out 3 credit cards and started building Colton Technologies in my garage. For 2 years I lived on ramen and coffee, working 20-hour days. Then we got our first major client and everything exploded from there. Hazel listened intently. When did you get married? Theodore's expression tightened. 5 years ago. Her name was Miranda. We met at a tech conference. She was beautiful, charming, seemed genuinely interested in my work. We got married after dating for 8 months. Everything seemed perfect. What happened? I found out she'd been cheating on me with a venture capitalist who was worth more than I was at the time. When I confronted her, she didn't even deny it. She said. Theodore paused, the memory still painful. She said I was a stepping stone. That she'd married me for the money and connections and she'd found someone with more of both. She took me for $30 million in the divorce and laughed when I said I'd loved her. Hazel reached for his hand. I'm sorry. After that, women started coming out of nowhere. All of them interested, all of them beautiful, all of them clearly calculating my net worth before deciding how charming to be. I tried dating. Honestly, for about a year, but every single woman either wanted my money or wanted to be seen with me because of my status. No one seemed to care about me as a person. So you started the test. So I started the test, Theodore confirmed. I thought if I could find someone who'd want me when I had nothing, I'd know their feelings were real. 24 women rejected me before you. Some immediately, some after a few dates. One actually threw her drink in my face when I said I was unemployed. That's awful. It was. But it made me cynical. I stopped believing that anyone could love me for me. And then I walked into your diner and you paid for my meal without hesitation. You didn't know me. You didn't expect anything in return. You just helped because you're genuinely kind. Hazel was quiet for a moment. I understand why you did the test. I do. But Theodore lied to me for months after. That's different. That's not protecting yourself anymore. That's choosing not to trust me even after I proved I was trustworthy. I know. And I don't have a good excuse for that. I was scared. I kept thinking, what if she changes when she finds out? What if knowing I have money makes her see me differently? What if I lose the one real thing I've found? So instead you built our entire relationship on a lie and guaranteed you'd lose me when the truth came out. Yes, I'm an idiot. I know that now. Hazel leaned back against the couch. You're not an idiot. You're traumatized. What happened with your ex-wife messed you up and you never dealt with it. You just started running tests instead of going to therapy. Theodore blinked. You're right. I never thought about it that way. Of course I'm right. Theodore, you need help. Real help from a professional. Because this pattern you have, where you test people instead of trusting them, that's not healthy. And it's not fair to anyone who cares about you. Will you come with me? To therapy? You want couples counseling? I want us to work through this properly. With someone who can help us communicate better. I don't want to mess this up again. Hazel considered this. Okay. But I'm also going to therapy on my own. Because apparently I have a habit of working myself into the ground to avoid dealing with my feelings, and that's not healthy either. We're quite a pair. We are. Hazel squeezed his hand. But Theodore, I need you to understand something. If we're going to make this work, there can't be any more secrets. None. I don't care if you think you're protecting me or if you think I'm better off not knowing something. Complete honesty always. Can you do that? Yes. Absolutely. I mean it. No more surprises, no more manipulation, no more arranging things behind my back. Even if your intentions are good. I need to be an equal partner in this relationship, which means I need to know what's really happening. I promise. Complete transparency from now on. They started couples therapy the following week. The therapist, Dr. Patricia Martinez, was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who immediately identified both of their issues. Theodore, you have trust issues stemming from childhood abandonment and compounded by your ex-wife's betrayal, she said in their first session. Hazel, you have control issues stemming from losing your parents and becoming your brother's guardian at a young age. You're both trying to protect yourselves from being hurt again, but you're doing it in ways that actually prevent real intimacy. It was painful hearing their flaws laid out so clearly, but it was also necessary. Over the next several sessions they talked through everything. The lies, the hurt, the fear, the love that persisted despite it all. The question isn't whether you love each other, Dr. Martinez said in week 3. That's obvious. The question is whether you can build a relationship based on trust and equality rather than fear and control. Theodore, can you be vulnerable with Hazel without testing her first? Hazel, can you accept help without seeing it as weakness? I want to, Theodore said. I want to trust completely. Me too, Hazel added. I'm tired of doing everything alone. Then you both have work to do. Together and individually. Meanwhile, life went on. Brooks and Butter continued to thrive under Carol's management. Terrence got his college acceptance letters, including one from MIT with a full scholarship, which Theodore had arranged through legitimate channels this time, based on Terrence's actual merits. Theodore slowly reintegrated into Hazel's life, but differently this time. He was honest about his wealth, his business, his responsibilities. He invited her to his penthouse, showed her his real world. He introduced her to Richard and to his board members. He made sure she understood exactly who Theodore Colton was, beyond the web designer persona she'd known. This is overwhelming, Hazel admitted the first time she visited his penthouse. She stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows looking out at the city. Your home is bigger than my entire apartment building. It's just a space. It doesn't mean anything without people to share it with. I was miserable here before I met you. What about now? Theodore wrapped his arms around her from behind. Now I have hope. Hope that someday you'll forgive me completely. Hope that we can build something real together. I'm getting there, Hazel said softly. It's not easy, but I'm getting there. One evening, about 2 months after the truth came out, Theodore took Hazel to dinner at a small Italian restaurant. Not Rossini's, not anywhere fancy. Just a local place with good food and honest prices. Why here? Hazel asked. Because I don't want to impress you with money. I want to just be with you like a normal couple, eating normal food and talking about normal things. They did exactly that. They talked about Terrence's upcoming graduation, about Brooks and Butter's expansion plans, about a documentary they both wanted to watch. They didn't talk about Theodore's company or Hazel's exhausting schedule or the complicated path that had brought them together. Walking back to Hazel's apartment afterward, Theodore said, I have something to ask you. And I need you to know that I'm asking as myself, as the real me, with complete honesty. Hazel stopped walking. Okay. I want to invest in Brooks and Butter. Not secretly, not through shell companies, but openly as Theodore Colton. I want to be your business partner for real. Equal partnership, all decisions made together, complete transparency about finances and strategy. I'm not trying to control anything. I just want to help you build your dream, and I want us to do it together. Why? Because I believe in you. Because Brooks and Butter is amazing and deserves to grow. Because working alongside you, being part of something you're passionate about, makes me happier than running my tech company ever has. And because I love you and I want to build a future with you. Hazel looked up at him, searching his face. If I say yes, it's because I trust you, not because I need the money. Carol says we're doing fine financially. We don't need investment. I know. But you could do more with investment. Faster growth, more locations, better equipment. Not because you need it, but because it would help you achieve your vision. And you'd really be an equal partner? No secret manipulation, no controlling things from behind the scenes. Equal partnership. I promise. We make all decisions together. I'll teach you everything I know about business, and you'll teach me everything you know about baking. We'll figure it out together. Hazel was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay. Yes. Let's be real partners. Theodore felt relief and joy wash over him. Really? Really? But Theodore, if you lie to me again, if you do anything behind my back, that's it. I'll walk away and never look back. I mean that. I understand. Complete honesty. Always. I promise. They kissed there on the sidewalk, and it felt different from all their previous kisses. It felt like a beginning instead of a continuation. Like they were finally starting on honest ground. Back at the apartment, Terrence looked up from his homework. So are you guys officially back together now? Because I'd really like to know if I should stop walking on eggshells around here. Hazel laughed. Yes, we're officially back together. You can relax. Thank God. The tension was killing me. Terrence grinned at Theodore. Welcome back. But if you hurt her again, I'll hack your company's mainframe. He absolutely could do it too, Hazel said. MIT's best. I'll keep that in mind, Theodore said, ruffling Terrence's hair. How about I order pizza to celebrate? Now you're talking. That night, after pizza and bad movies and Terrence finally going to bed, Hazel and Theodore sat together on the couch. The same lumpy couch Theodore had slept on for weeks, pretending to be someone he wasn't. I missed this, Hazel said, leaning against him. Just being together without all the drama and hurt. Me too. Theodore kissed the top of her head. I know I've said it before, but I really am sorry. For all of it. You deserved honesty from the beginning. You're right, I did. But Theodore, I'm choosing to move forward, not stay stuck in the past. Yes, you lied. Yes, it hurt. But you also showed up when I needed you. You're helping Terrence achieve his dreams. You saved my life when I collapsed. And you're willing to do the hard work to make this relationship real. That has to count for something. It does. And I'm going to spend every day earning your trust. I know you will. Hazel tilted her face up to kiss him. And I'm going to work on letting you in completely, on accepting help without seeing it as failure. We're both going to do better. Together. Together. They sat in comfortable silence, and Theodore realized something. This small apartment, with its lumpy couch and second-hand furniture and sounds of the city outside, felt more like home than his penthouse ever had. Not because of the space, but because of the people in it. Hazel and Terrence had become his family. The first real family he'd had since his mother died. And he wasn't going to lose that. Not to his own fears, not to his past trauma, not to anything. He'd found something real. Finally, actually real. And he was going to hold on to it with everything he had. Outside, the city hummed with life. Brooks and Butter sat quiet and dark, waiting for tomorrow's customers. Theodore's company continued operating, making money he didn't need but provided security he craved. Terrence's future waited, bright and full of promise. But in this moment, in this apartment, with Hazel in his arms and trust slowly rebuilding between them, Theodore Colton had everything he'd been searching for all along. And this time he wasn't going to let it go. 6 months later, Hazel stood in front of the second location of Brooks and Butter, watching workers hang the sign. The new bakery was in a trendier part of downtown, with more foot traffic and higher visibility. It had been Theodore's idea, but they'd made every decision together, just like they'd promised. It looks perfect, Theodore said, coming up beside her with 2 coffees. Your mom would be proud. Hazel accepted the coffee and leaned against him. I think she would be. Though she'd probably say I was being too ambitious, opening a second location so soon. Your mom didn't know about me. With proper investment and management, there's no reason Brooks and Butter can't become a regional brand. Maybe even national someday. One step at a time, Colton. Let's make sure this location works first. They'd fallen into an easy partnership over the past months. Theodore had invested $2 million in Brooks & Butter, and in return he held 30% equity and served as co-CEO alongside Hazel. It was a real partnership in every sense. They met weekly to review finances, strategy, and operations. They disagreed sometimes, usually about pace of growth. Theodore wanted faster, Hazel preferred more cautious. But they always talked through their differences. More importantly, Theodore had kept his promise about complete honesty. He told Hazel everything about his business dealings, his wealth, his commitments. When he had to travel for Colton Technologies, he invited her along when possible. When he couldn't, he video called every night to tell her about his day. Transparency is exhausting sometimes, Theodore had admitted one evening. I'm not used to explaining every decision, every meeting, every expenditure. Get used to it, Hazel had replied. That's what real relationships look like. No secrets, no surprises. Their therapy sessions had helped enormously. Dr. Martinez had taught them communication tools that they used religiously. When Theodore felt himself wanting to fix something for Hazel without asking, he paused and asked instead. When Hazel felt herself pulling away or trying to handle everything alone, she forced herself to reach out for help. It wasn't perfect. They still had arguments. Theodore still sometimes slipped into his old habit of trying to control situations from behind the scenes, and Hazel still sometimes pushed herself too hard rather than accepting help. But now they recognized those patterns and called each other out on them. I'm proud of us, Hazel said, watching the sign go up. We've come a long way from that night in the diner. The night you saved me from embarrassment and paid for my meal? The night you started lying to me, you mean? But Hazel was smiling. They could joke about it now, though it had taken months to get there. I prefer my version of the story. I bet you do. The new location opened 2 weeks later to massive crowds. The publicity from Theodore's involvement had helped. Business journals had covered the story of the billionaire CEO investing in a local bakery, but it was Hazel's baking that kept people coming back. Her cinnamon rolls had developed a cult following, and the chocolate cake that used her mother's recipe regularly sold out before noon. Terrence, now graduated and preparing to start at MIT in the fall, had become the unofficial social media manager for Brooks & Butter. His posts and videos had gone viral several times, bringing in customers from across the region. You're a natural entrepreneur, Theodore told the kid one evening at dinner. Ever thought about business school after your engineering degree? Maybe. But right now I'm just excited to finally be going to college. And to stop being the third wheel at family dinners. Terrence grinned. You guys are getting really obvious about the whole being in love thing. We're not that obvious, Hazel protested. You literally just fed him a bite of your dessert. You never share food. Theodore laughed. He's got you there. These dinners had become a weekly tradition. Every Sunday the three of them gathered at Theodore's penthouse or Hazel's apartment. They'd moved to a bigger place but kept it modest, and cooked together. It was family time, real family time, and Theodore treasured it. One Sunday, about 8 months after the truth came out, Theodore made an announcement over dessert. I'm stepping down as CEO of Colton Technologies. Both Hazel and Terrence stared at him. What? Hazel said. What? I thought you loved that company. I built it and I'm proud of what it's become. But I don't love running it anymore. I haven't for a while. Richard is going to take over as CEO. He's more than qualified, and honestly, he's been doing most of the work anyway while I've been focused on Brooks & Butter. Theodore, you don't have to give up your company for me. I'm not giving it up. I'm still the majority owner, still on the board. I'm just not running the day-to-day operations anymore. Because you know what I realized? I'm happier working at the bakery with you than I've ever been running a billion-dollar tech company. I'm happier helping Terrence with calculus and making sure we don't burn the Sunday roast than I am in board meetings. This is where I want to be. Hazel's eyes filled with tears. Are you sure? Completely sure. I've spent years chasing success and money, trying to prove something to the world and to myself. But none of it made me happy. You make me happy. This family makes me happy. Brooks & Butter makes me happy. So that's what I'm choosing. Terrence raised his glass. To choosing happiness. And to not burning the roast, which I think is currently happening based on that smell. They jumped up, laughing, to rescue dinner. It was a little charred but still edible. They ate it anyway, talking and laughing and planning Terrence's going-away party before MIT. Later, after Terrence had gone to study, Hazel and Theodore sat on her apartment balcony, looking out at the city lights. I have something for you, Theodore said. He pulled out a small box, but before Hazel could panic, he opened it to reveal a key. It's to the penthouse. I want you to have your own key, come and go as you please. I know we're not ready to live together again yet, but I want you to feel like you have a space there. Like it's your home too. Hazel took the key, running her thumb over it. This is a big step. I know. No pressure. But Hazel, I'm in this for the long term. I want us to build a life together at whatever pace feels right for you. Marriage, living together, whatever the future holds, I want to do it with you. Did you just propose? Theodore smiled. Not yet. When I propose, you'll know it. This is just me telling you my intentions. Complete transparency, remember? I love you, Hazel said. I love who you really are, not the persona, not the money, just you. The person who helps my brother with homework and taste tests recipes at midnight and is willing to walk away from a billion-dollar company to work at a bakery. I love you too. So much. They kissed as the city sparkled below them, and Theodore felt complete in a way he never had before. He'd spent years looking for someone who would love him despite his wealth, but what he'd found was something better. Someone who loved him because of who he was, wealth included but not defining. Someone who saw all of him, the good and the bad, the past mistakes and the current efforts to do better. 3 months later, on the anniversary of the day they'd met in the diner, Theodore took Hazel back to Riverside Diner. Linda was still running the place, though Hazel had convinced her to finally hire enough staff that she wasn't working herself to death. They sat in the same booth by the window where Theodore had first sat, where Hazel had served him coffee and paid for his meal without hesitation. This is where it all started, Theodore said. Where you showed me what real kindness looks like. This is where you lied to me about your identity, Hazel corrected, but she was smiling. That too. Theodore reached across the table and took her hand. Hazel Brooks, I have something to ask you and I'm going to do it with complete honesty this time. No games, no tests, no deception. Just the truth. He slid out of the booth and knelt beside the table. Hazel's eyes went wide as he pulled out a ring box. The truth is that you're the best thing that ever happened to me. The truth is that I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. The truth is that I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy, supporting your dreams, and being your equal partner in everything. Will you marry me? Hazel was crying now, but she was also laughing. You're proposing in the diner where we met? That's actually perfect. Is that a yes? That's a yes. Absolutely yes. Theodore slipped the ring onto her finger, and the entire diner burst into applause. Theodore realized that the restaurant was full of familiar faces. Terrence was there holding up his phone to record. Richard and Carol were there. Jessica and Ramon from the bakery. Linda behind the counter. Even Mrs. Davidson and some of Terrence's friends. Did you plan this? Hazel asked. I wanted everyone who loves you to be here. Is that okay? It's more than okay. It's perfect. They kissed while everyone cheered, and Theodore felt like his journey had finally come full circle. He'd started with a test, looking for someone who would love him without his money. But what he'd found was someone who loved him completely, money and all, flaws and strengths, past mistakes and current growth. Hazel had taught him that love wasn't about tests or tricks or protection. It was about vulnerability and honesty and showing up for each other, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. I have one condition, Hazel said as they sat back down, her new ring catching the light. Name it. Complete honesty. Always. Forever. No more secrets, no more lies, no more tests. If we're doing this, we're doing it for real. Deal. I wouldn't want it any other way. They celebrated that night with everyone they loved. Terrence gave an embarrassingly heartfelt toast about how Theodore had become like a brother to him. Richard joked about how Theodore had driven him crazy during the whole deception period. Linda presented them with a special dessert, saying it was on the house, just like that first meal had been. As the party wound down and people started leaving, Hazel and Theodore found themselves alone at their booth once more. You know what I was thinking about earlier? Hazel said. That night you came in here with your declined credit card, I almost didn't pay for your meal. I was so tired and $10 was a lot for me back then. I almost just told you to wash dishes or something. Really? Really? But then I saw your face, how embarrassed you were, and I remembered what my mom used to say. That kindness costs nothing but can mean everything. So I paid, never imagining it would lead to this. I'm glad you did. Though I probably deserve to wash dishes after everything I put you through. Maybe. But you've more than made up for it. Hazel squeezed his hand. You came back, Theodore. After I kicked you out, after I said all those angry things, you came back and did the hard work to make things right. That means something. I'd come back 1,000 times. For you, I'd do anything. I know. And that's why I said yes. They left the diner hand in hand, walking out into the cool night air. The city hummed around them, full of life and possibility. Brooks and Butter sat dark a few blocks away, ready for tomorrow's customers. Terrence was heading home to pack for MIT. Theodore's penthouse waited, now truly a home because Hazel would be there. Everything had worked out. Not perfectly, not easily, but authentically. And that was better than any test Theodore could have designed. Because real love wasn't about perfect circumstances or ideal situations. It was about two imperfect people choosing each other, every single day despite the difficulties. It was about forgiveness and growth and building something together from honest foundations. Theodore Colton had spent years looking for someone to pass his test. But in the end, Hazel Brooks had tested him in ways he never expected. She'd tested his willingness to be vulnerable, to be honest, to put someone else's needs above his own fears. She'd tested whether he could love without controlling, trust without testing, give without manipulation. And he'd passed. Eventually. Imperfectly. But he'd passed. Now, walking through the city with his fiancée, Theodore felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not the fragile, suspicious peace of someone always waiting for the other shoe to drop, but genuine peace. The kind that comes from knowing you're loved for exactly who you are. "Hey Theodore?" Hazel said as they reached her apartment building. "Yeah. Thank you for coming into my diner that night. Even if you were lying about your credit card." Theodore laughed. "Thank you for not letting me wash dishes. I'll never let you live that down, will I? Probably not. But that's okay. I've got the rest of our lives to make it up to you. The rest of our lives." I like the sound of that. Me too. They went inside, ready to start planning their future. A future built on honesty, trust, and a love that had survived tests neither of them expected. It wasn't the fairy tale Theodore had once imagined, where a prince found his princess and everything was instantly perfect. It was better. It was real. And real, Theodore had finally learned, was worth more than any fantasy.